her hand away. Did you notice that?
No.
She had her hand out and then she was like, no, pulled it back, and then she had her hand out and she knocked it away. Like, no, not gonna happen here. I don't know if you guys, if we have a couple seconds to see it, maybe you can run as we're talking. Because there's, this seems to be like, here, I don't know if we had it. It was right before that. So the thing is there's a video, maybe let's look for a second here. Hand out, get that out of here. See it? She's Dikembe Mutombo.
Self-satisfied Karen.
No. By the way, I was seeing videos of this high school graduation down in Baton Rouge or New Orleans area, where all the students, as they graduated, were full-on dance line type of dances, celebrations. It was a party at the bottom, at the floor, as they were finally happy about the opportunity to move on with the next stages of life. Stuff that people always want to celebrate. And I wonder how many people, after seeing that display, got so upset. I wish I had the video, almost forgot from today. From the display of folks dancing, children, well now adults graduating high school, some of them 18, dancing and celebrating and enjoying themselves, because this whole thing called a celebration is weird. Yeah. I'm not sure how much it disrupted the ceremonies or how they can never have another graduation again on this campus because of it. I'm okay with rules as long as there's a reason behind them.
Welcome to education. Like most education institutions and school administrators, no, there's no reason. It is just to keep you in line and to prep you to be a little worker bee, for the corporations who are going to underpay you. So rise up, everybody.
Yeah, you have to settle in, make sure we're down on this one small piece of a rule. And by the way, maybe it's for time, right? If everybody cheers, it's gonna be long applauses for all 350, 400, 500, who cares how many graduates there are. And it's gonna take much longer. We have this place rented from 2 to 4:30. So they can't do it that way. Except in this case, someone giggled and someone went, whoa. I don't know how much longer that took. There has to be a reason behind it. That's it, Francesca. Thank you for joining me on the program today. It's been a big Friday. Appreciate you. You guys, of course, check her out on the Bitchuation Room, and especially on Fridays when they have bonus episodes as well. Thanks, Francesca. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Happy Juneteenth as well. Also, thank you guys as well. Enjoy your weekend. Up next is the Young Turks. We got more power panels happening. Go check them out. We'll see you next week. All right, see you. Bye.
I'm just taking care of people's bugs, sir.
What do you mean bugs?
drop it like it's a UFO. All right, power panel. Jake Huger, John Idaho, of course, host of the Damage Report, and Ramesh Srinivasan. He is not only a UCLA professor, but is the author of Beyond the Valley: How Innovators Around the World are Overcoming Inequality and Creating the Technologies of Tomorrow. Ramesh, good to have you back on.
Thank you guys for having me again. Great to see you both.
No problem, great to see you. All right, so it turns out UFOs are real. Told you, and a little bit more nuance than that in this story, but not that much more. And then we'll get into politics. But first, aliens.
Yes, yes. They say the truth is out there, but today the truth is in here.
Oh, damn.
And I'm gonna reveal it to you. I don't actually really know anything, but we're gonna talk about it either way. It's now been well over a week since we were promised that Congress is going to be looking into these claims that have been made recently about UFOs and extraterrestrials and government programs developing advanced weapons. And yet nothing appears to have been scheduled yet, and so people are left wondering, what is there to these claims that have been made? If you haven't been following this, we're going to catch you up. There's a whistleblower, David Charles Grush, who has a lot of experience in this area. Aerial objects, extraterrestrial objects, and he's revealed quite a bit. He is a decorated former combat officer in Afghanistan, a veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, as well as the National Reconnaissance Office. He served as the Reconnaissance Office's representative to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force from 2019 to 2021. From late 21 to July 2022, he was the NGA's co-lead for UAP, the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. That's what they're now calling UFOs, or that's what fancy people in ties are calling them, and a representative to the task force. So has a background in this area, and here are the claims that he has made. He said that recoveries of partial fragments through and up to intact vehicles have been made for decades through to the present day by the government, its allies, and defense contractors. It says that we believe that they are extraterrestrial because of exotic origin materials, meta-analysis of blah, blah, sciencey stuff. Now, Grush said that he reported to Congress on the existence of a decades-long, quote, publicly known unknown Cold War for recovered and exploited physical material, a competition with near-peer adversaries over the years to identify UAP crashes and landings and retrieve the material for exploitation, reverse engineering to garner asymmetric national defense advantages, which are my favorite type of national defense advantages. Anyway, he says that this program has been illegally shielded from proper congressional oversight and that he's been targeted and harassed because of his investigation. There has been some write-up of this, but as we have talked about over the past week or two since the initial claims have been made, not a ton of really high-level national discussion about it. And there are theoretically reasons for that. This person has a lot of experience, Grush, in this area. And there are other high-profile individuals from the military and from intelligence agencies that have vouched for his experience and integrity. But there are issues in terms of what evidence has been presented. I mean, effectively, no specific evidence has been presented. But even to what extent there's second or third hand evidence is still very much in the air. So to go back to the intro, would love to find out when Congress is gonna do these investigations. They said they're going to. We've got some updates, but what do you both make of this?
Okay, bloop, 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 they're here. It's over, everybody panic. Okay, no, you don't have to panic. And I'll explain why in a second. Aliens are more likely to be friendly than you think. So that is just my theory, okay? So that's a fun one.
They look friendly from the footage.
Yeah, I mean, geez them. Okay, so that is not real footage. We just want to be clear, okay? So now look, guys, there's one giant problem here in the evidence, and then I'm going to tell you a number of things that make me think, no, they're definitely here, and then let's talk about what the implications of that are. So the giant problem is no one yet in the public has gotten the secret evidence, right? There's no pictures, there's no video of the craft that Grush or anyone else is talking about, or this potentially several different alien craft that we have apparently captured along with other governments, right? And it is a bit shocking that between the US government and other governments that no pictures or video have leaked. Now here comes a giant but. Well, on the other hand, this guy's leaking, right? He doesn't have the pictures of the video, but he is telling you, no, I definitely saw it. And everybody that the reporters talk to swear up and down that he's credible, and the people he's attached to are very credible, storied record in terms of his service to the country, et cetera, et cetera. So imagine these are not like loons, and there are loons in the government, right? There are MAGA and right-wing guys who believe anything. So we have no evidence that this guy is anywhere near that, just to be clear.
Yeah, no, we definitely don't. And I'm only pointing this out because it seems to be abundantly clear. To be clear, he is not saying that he has seen the craft or the aliens.
Yep.
He is saying that they do exist, and that they do exist, and there are photos and video, but he also has not seen the photos of the video.
Yeah.
So he hasn't even seen the evidence of the real object.
Well, he just saw it right here on the Young Turks next to you. So obviously, there you go, worldwide exclusive.
I missed it because I was looking at you.
Well, oh well, too bad. Too
Just
late.
like Bigfoot, you look away for a second.
Okay, now all kidding aside, so that's an important reservation. But remember, it's not like there isn't any video. We've all seen the videos of the unidentified flying objects that are flying way faster and in a way that no human craft that we know of can possibly fly. And that's not conspiracy, that's out in the open. Those videos have come out from the US government before, and Congress is having hearings. Barack Obama says something. Okay, now he's not very clear about something, but he's heavily hinted at it, right? So when you put all this together, and the most important factor here is without any of that evidence, there was already logic. When you add this stuff in, it makes the logic kind of unassailable. Now, any scientist will tell you it is a near statistic impossibility for humans to be the only life forms, or all the life forms on planet Earth being the only life forms in the universe. That's near impossible. So, and none of them are smarter than we are? We're a bunch of knuckleheads. We barely came out of the womb, right? And we're all like, ooga, ooga, if I see alien, I smash it, oh yeah, right? So I imagine in the billions of years that the universe has existed, other life forms have come about on other planets, and they have advanced further than we have, and hence can do the kind of space travel that would have them come here. That's the logic already. Now when you add in the extra evidence, it seems like it would be very surprising if all of these people were making it up and that there were no aircraft that anyone had ever recovered. And I'm gonna add one last thing to it. Look, there's tons of conspiracy theories that go around, and just because a lot of people say it doesn't mean a damn thing, okay? Or doesn't necessarily mean a damn thing. On the other hand, people saying that they saw UFOs, etc., for time immemorial, kind of does feel a little bit like black people saying, we got beat up by cops, time immemorial, and no one ever believes them, right? And then one day you go, wait, what if they were all just telling the truth, right? And no one ever believed them because like, oh yeah, the chances there'd be a UFO. I mean, somebody could be more advanced than us apes down here. Can you imagine, right? Yeah, I could definitely imagine. So I think we're almost there. I'm gonna tell you why you don't have to worry, but Ramesh is smarter than both of us. So what do you think?
Well, definitely on the topic of aliens, I don't claim to be any sort of expert at all. But then just sort of checking out the graphics and reading the story, it made me think of that movie, that spoof on Independence Day by Tim Burton, Mars Attacks. Do y'all remember that movie?
Yep.
That was just hilarious, right? So I think though, any level of humility or understanding of the nature of the cosmos, and I grew up watching Carl Sagan, would incline one to recognize that there must be many other forms of life that exist in this universe because we're so infinitesimal. I remember that word, infinitesimal. And so that sense of humility, that there are probably many other types of non-carbon based life that exist around, throughout the universe, I think is an important sort of recognition in a way that can actually maybe move us human beings out of our anthropocentric mindset toward recognizing something far larger than ourselves. But in the meantime, I think there are some real turf wars being connected to questions of space. First of all, the privatization of space, right? We see drone operators and the militarization of space, right? Space Force, other kinds of ventures, right? So space, traditionally for many cultures around the world, including here in Mexico, the Nahuatl communities I'm going to visit tomorrow, is seen as a commons, right? Space is like related to our beliefs, who we are. We are of space. We are stardust, right? In that sense. But instead, we can actually see political and economic forces looking for new terrain to control and extract value out of. And that we see from the privatization and so on of space. So I think just the story itself is important in the sense that it can humble us all. But I think we also need to look at who is or is not included in our ventures in space, and also recognize, as Black peoples have been telling us for many years, from Gil Scott-Heron to more recently A Tribe Called Quest, two of my favorite musicians, Black people aren't really part of the space discussion. We're stuck here, as they say, or Whitey on the moon, to quote Gil Scott-Heron right there.
Can I give you a little bit more updates?
Yeah, including the dead body of the alien. All right, hold on. We have that coming up. Go ahead, John.
Well, it turns out that in his story, the dead bodies are not only aliens, they're humans as well. So
Dun, dun, dun.
I want to give you just a few of the additions that were made by Grush in an interview with News Nation. So he stated that the vehicles were, quote, not necessarily extraterrestrial, but by that he does not mean that they necessarily were just from Earth. He believes that they might have come from another dimension, stating, quote, as somebody who studied physics, where maybe they're coming from a different physical dimension as described in quantum mechanics. Also possible, it's outside of my level of knowledge about any of that, although I have watched a lot of Star Trek. But he also hinted that some of the alien beings were malevolent and had even killed humans. He implied that there was some kind of secret agreement between the government and aliens and that people had been murdered to protect the secret. So look, all of that is based on what we know about Earth governments, plausible. They would definitely do a deal behind our backs for their own personal gain or whatever, and they would definitely kill people to cover up. I have no doubt about that. It just does really seem like it is a very long time horizon for, like, nobody from any of these governments came out with like undeniable evidence or anything. You have these like trading back and forth of power in the United States government. I know that we understand that there's not necessarily a huge distinction between some of those governments, even when the party switches. But also there's the question of motivation. So if we believe that aliens exist, which I do, I don't doubt whatsoever that they exist somewhere, but somewhere is super big and time is super long. I mean, it's entirely possible that, like countless trillions of civilizations developed and then died off 4 billion years ago. And everything is just so big and the timeline is so long that it's not just that alien life has to exist, it has to be close and it has to be at the same time as you. And so presumably it is based on what we're seeing here. So then they come and they like hover over a cornfield. They crash a lot, by the way. Apparently they're just crashing everywhere. They're killing some humans, but only I guess a few isolated ones. Like, what are they doing here? They seem pretty disinterested. And we only care insofar as we can take their technology and build something out of it. But is there anything that we've built in the last 50 years that is such a crazy leap forward that it had to have come from a UFO? And in the last few decades, we've barely even done any space travel ourselves. So where are the advantages coming from all this equipment that we've recovered? We barely still have the space station. We're relying on billionaires, I guess, to maybe go kind of in the atmosphere and then back down. Why aren't we halfway to Pluto at this point?
Yeah, well, so let me tackle all of that. So first of all, look, these different witnesses say that Grush is unassailable, but you read some of those comments and I think slightly assailable, right? Without knowing anything else, but the shootouts between the aliens and the humans seems very unlikely. So, and remember, he hasn't personally seen any of this. So that's the part where I go, and then in a different interview, he talked about how they had also recovered the dead bodies of the pilots of the alien aircraft. Again, if you haven't seen it, how do you know it? Maybe you saw the documents. So trust me, just don't take this at face value like, oh, it's over, right? Yeah, I think he's definitely telling the truth. This is definitely the case. It's just, we're talking about odds and likelihood, etc. And we say no one's leaked, and that's surprising, except for the fact that he just leaked, and they did have hearings before, etc. So there's plenty of information on both sides. And I'm gonna clarify this, even though it's hilarious. None of the videos and pictures we showed you are real, okay? Because in this day and age, you never know. And I did say there is real video, and there is, but those weren't it, okay? And so, okay.
It's pretty high def.
Why do I think aliens wouldn't attack us? Because we evolved in a very specific way here on Earth. Evolution is real, right? And the kind of apes we are territorial. So like our cousins, the chimpanzees, who we share 99% of our DNA with, when they get to a part of the woods that they would like to take control over, they take control over it, and they're very territorial about it. And if even other chimpanzees get into the area, they will attack and they will protect the resources that they have. That's the kind of being we are as well. We're very territorial. So we assume when we project that the alien life forms that we have no literally earthly idea about or non-earthly idea about, we're like, oh, they're gonna attack us. No, that is very unlikely that they would have evolved in the same way that we did. We don't even know if they're carbon-based. You think they're gonna attack us like a bunch of monkeys? Like, no, we're the apes, not them. Okay, so like that, and then there's some the conspiracy theorists are like, they're coming here because they need to harvest us. They didn't evolve on this planet. There's a near 0% chance that they could consume us. They would have consumed the things that they evolved consuming on their planet for whatever they consume for energy. We don't know that it's even other life forms, right? The idea that they could come on a planet they didn't evolve on and think that the animals there would be yummy. To say that is unlikely is it just doesn't do it justice. Very, very, very unlikely, okay? So don't panic about aliens and UFOs, etc. But it is super interesting. And I'm gonna add one more thing to what Ramesh said, which is, and it relates to what John was talking about at the end. Don't worry, John, we're gonna look at everything and discover everything. The minute we find very, very valuable minerals on other like asteroids, meteors, planets, etc. In which case Elon and Bezos and the others are gonna do a mad rush there. The US government's gonna say, whoever gets there first owns it, okay? And that's usually what we do in America. And then we'll start to own space and planets, and it'll be a wonderful mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say one quick thing here, which is that I think when we talk about space or even aliens or other forms of life, it's partly allegorical. It's partly like how we may want to think of ourselves and what we are and who we are. And I liked that you mentioned Star Trek earlier, John, because that's one vision of what life could look like with our species in relation to other species, or more generally the cosmos. More federation-based, more dialogue-based, more communion-based. Just like we could also be, we're pretty close in our DNA to bonobos who resolve their disputes through sexuality rather than violence, like the chimpanzees. So I think just as we look at stories like this, we have an opportunity to cast a type of mirror back on ourselves and make decisions about how we want to be and who we want to be as a species more largely. And I think all of this is very relevant given the climactic challenges and the whole discussion of the Anthropocene and all of that.
Yeah, and Ramesh is right. The bonobos are also 99% of our DNA. Slightly variation, obviously, somewhere between the chimpanzees and the bonobos, and they do resolve things through sex. That might explain the probes that people have talked about in the abduction stories.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. Okay, yes, I'm not about the bonobos, but about the probes.
No, that's true. We looked into it. I'm gonna end this with two of my fears. One that I just developed thanks to Ramesh, actually. Ramesh, please don't say anything more factual about the bonobos, because the Republicans are gonna try to boycott them or something if they find out. They're woke monkeys with their sexuality. But anyway, my other fear is, so we were talking about Elon Musk and Bezos and all that, and the reason they become so notable in space travel is it's very expensive. So only the very expensive can afford to engage in it, and only like the richest jerks would want to individually do it because they have something to prove and everything. So what if aliens are like us in that way too? What if the only aliens that travel here are like rich alien a-holes? Like alien Bezos is the only one, and it's like he finally comes out of the ship and he's just a jerk and he's cringy. He uses the same crying emoji every time.
If I was the president, I'd say no vacancy. No vacancy, please go back home.
He flatly stated that he will give all of his money to his for-profit space company, which is called Blue Origin. He being Jeff Bezos. So that says everything we need to know.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and I think the aliens are just waiting for Trump to win again, so they could finally land and go take us to your leader. This is gonna be easy, way easier than we expected.
Anyway, we're gonna take our first break. When we come back, more aliens after this.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to members. Textan writes in, don't you hate those people at work that go on vacation and come back just to show up on Friday when most of the work is done?
Before a 3-day weekend.
Not sure what made me think of that, they write in. Okay, I'll have you know that I was not on vacation. I was working in New York, okay? You saw one of my videos from New York, but no, I was at a convention. Important stuff, very important.
Yeah, what convention?
I can't say.
Oh, yeah.
But I literally can't.
Yeah, and my girlfriend goes to a different school, so.
What is this? Okay, anyway, all right, Jenks Left Tricep or Fury writes in, Jenks back. Welcome back, brother. Not to tattle, but I think that Johnny Ty was playing Dungeons and Dragons in your office while you were away.
No, I was playing at my house, actually.
Oh, okay, well, still tattling, I like it. Tattle away. I Am Sock says, thank God we solved all of our social problems here so we can spend time and money on UFO hearings. Although, if they did come, I would spend the time and money on those hearings. If we have evidence of that. Vicky says, Jank, XOXO, I appreciate the X's and those. Just so you know, you have the very best of hosts, reporters, and guests than any news station on the planet. That is all. Thank you, Vicky, I appreciate that, and I think you are correct. Mark Gogan says, at this point, if I get abducted, I would consider it a rescue mission. Funniest audience in the world. Nice job, Mark, I like it. America needs a reboot, writes in. Hey, shout out to John for putting in a ton of work this week. Respect. Here, agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed with him.
I had fun with that Chris Christie town hall, actually. That was fun. I know you did the previous one by yourself. It was fun, actually.
Yeah, he's a hoot and a holler. Taylor Latte Boy writes in, we should listen to Cenk about this alien stuff. He has experience firsthand from the movie Contact. Hashtag Thug Life, hashtag Shop TYT. Everyone get your Contact shirts. I don't know if we still have those up there. Check it out just for fun. Go to shoptyt.com. See if you could find the picture of me in the movie Contact. We had those shirts made at some point.
That's a great movie, by the way.
Yeah. Well, look, that's why I'm a bit of an expert. Not a big deal. Also, I was in Deep Impact. Okay, now those weren't aliens, but it was an meteor that did hit, and my car was in the background of that movie, so I know a lot about aliens. Dragon with a girl tattoo with another indisputably correct take. The aliens came, and after a quick look, they noped out. I think that's most exactly what happened. Nope. No, thank you. Mountain Dragon says, as a total UFO nerd, this story is such a great distraction from all the horrible news. So glad TYT is showcasing this, even if it is for laughs. But not just for laughs. I think it's real, and I think it's important. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, Ramesh, and Nikki Canning. Nikki just joined. We appreciate it. They hit the join button below the video. That's cute and beautiful, so you can click on it and become one of the young Turks. Help us bring out honest reporting to this country and to the rest of the world. That was what the convention was about that I can't tell you about. Okay, John.
Yeah, okay, well, you know what? I think you put in a long week of work at a conference that totally happened. So we should reward you with a story that I think you're gonna enjoy quite a bit. We have no idea at this point if Donald Trump is gonna face any legal consequences in terms of jail time for the many charges that he's facing. There's a lot of different outs that he has. He could become president and pardon himself. Some of the jurors, could be big pro-Trump people and they could go his way. He could be innocent, I suppose. But what if there was one other way that he could be saved? What if he doesn't have to pardon himself? What if Joe Biden just does it for him? I was, I think, quite a bit persuaded by something I read in the Washington Post. If you take a look at this, arguing that that's what should happen. Biden should pardon Trump. Really? And it's a good point that you're making when you have to put the really afterward. But no, they're making the case. It's not just Geraldo anymore. Now it's in the pages of the Washington Post op-ed section. And the entire thing's amazing. You should read the entire thing, but we're gonna give you a little sampling of some of the arguments that are made. Because remember, they're trying to convince Democrats to be okay with this, the idea of Biden saving Donald Trump. So it starts with, in his 2020 victory speech, Joe Biden declared that, quote, to everything there is a season, a time to build, a time to reap, a time to sow, and a time to heal. This is the time to heal in America. And they go on to say, if he wants to deliver on his promise to heal the country, he could do so with one action: pardon Donald Trump. That's the action that will bring us all together and heal the great divides that we're experiencing. They say the threshold for the sitting president's administration to indict the leading candidate of the opposing party should be extraordinarily high. High enough to mitigate the suspicion held by 80% of Republicans and almost half the nation, per ABC News Ipsos polling, that these charges are politically motivated. Indeed, millions of Americans believe that our legal system is being weaponized against Trump and, by extension, against them. Millions will see Trump's prosecution as illegitimate and any conviction as unjust that will further erode public confidence in our judicial system and the principle of equal justice under law. There are a couple of other points we make that we will get to, but why don't we start with that? The idea that you have to pardon him because if you convict him, his base will think that that's unfair, when the reason that they'll think it's unfair is because Trump and Republicans keep telling them that it's unfair. It's not like they went to the library and read a bunch of books and came to that conclusion. They have been sold for years that there should be no consequences for literally anything. Pardoning him would take away the consequences, so they would seem to be right at that point. So do you find that to be persuasive, that because so many people will never accept that this is legitimate, no matter what comes out, what evidence, he could be on tape, doesn't matter, that Biden should pardon him?
Yeah, that's why I thought OJ should have been pardoned too. I mean, a lot of people didn't accept that verdict, but obviously it was true. Well, in that case, they didn't have to pardon him, but I'm sure that these same people would have made the argument had he been convicted. A lot of people don't think he was guilty, so they should be pardoned. No, of course, that's an absurd standard. I'm gonna come back to it. So, look, when he says it's a time to heal, I think what he means is HEEL. Right. So don't get him wrong. He's saying that Biden shouldn't pardon him in his next term if it gets to that point as a way of healing the country after the election. He's saying Biden should pardon him now. No, hard pass. So it doesn't. The reason that the right wing is going to this is because there's no defense of Donald Trump. They've now tried it all over television and it's getting humiliating. And they go to the double standard first, like, oh yeah, what about Hillary Clinton and James and then Joe Biden, the Corvette, and Mike Pence and stuff. He had a couple papers and stuff. Yeah, what about that? They go to that because they can't defend Donald Trump. He definitely did it. He's on tape admitting he did it. His excuses are, I laser-eyed it. If I just hear the papers rustling, it's declassified. None of these things are remotely true. When you go to court, you can't possibly say that, because you get laughed out of court and into prison, right? So they got nothing left. So they're like, well, the Democrats are super weak and their leaders are super dumb. Maybe if we just tell the Biden, hey, the really classy bipartisan thing to do, Joe, would be to pardon him. And I don't think that that's a crazy strategy. I mean, I would be, look, is Joe Biden going to pardon him now? No, I don't believe that even Joe Biden is that mental about bipartisanship, right? But if he wins another term, which again is a fantastical idea, I don't think he has any chance of winning another term. But if he did, would he consider pardoning Trump then? If you think he wouldn't, you don't know Joe Biden at all. Joe Biden can't wait to pardon Trump. But doing it before the election is even beyond his weakness. I don't even think he could heal that much. I'm gonna come back to the 80% of Republicans in a second, but first, Ramesh.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been watching your coverage, and you all discussed in great detail how Biden sold out in a way any sort of real progressive values or the progressive base with the debt ceiling discussion, right? So, here's someone who is willing to sort of capitulate before actually holding any ground or necessarily having any leverage on, for the most part during this administration. So in a sense, it wouldn't be surprising in that sense. But it also allows me the opportunity to ask a question that I don't see discussed very often in relation to this Trump indictment, which is, in this country, a felon can be elected president, but a felon can't vote, which is really interesting if you juxtapose those two together. I think only in 2 states can a felon vote. There's some period of time after the conviction that there's some period by which they could not vote. So I think it's interesting, because I think what has not occurred has been a clear differentiation about how and in what ways Trump has abused his own corruption relative to the corruption of the leading Democrats, right? So that's why, I've been watching a lot of coverage of Trump supporters saying, well, this is a double standard because Hillary and Biden and Hunter Biden are also corrupt in various ways. But this is a markedly different and a markedly escalated form of corruption that Trump has engaged in here. And I don't think that's been sufficiently explained, certainly not to the wider American public. But I also think it's very telling, because if Trump is able to get away with all of this, and I would say that's entirely possible in a lot of different ways, including being convicted and pardoning himself, he will be able to basically double down or triple down on what he's already showed and been very clear about in these couple revealing moments in his own political history, where he gets on the stage with all the other Republicans and says, I bought you out, I bought you out, I bought you out, and I bought Democrats out. That's what I do. I buy people out because the entire system is corrupt, as you've talked about a lot, Cenk, over the years. Or even this kind of, I can kill someone on Fifth Avenue, whatever that comment was, right? So I think so what needs to be done is a precedent that shows justice actually matters and shows how this is a violation of justice. And in the other cases, it's not as egregious, or it's markedly different. And I think if that doesn't occur, it's going to have the disastrous effect and that's likely to occur, that the Washington Post, op-ed, which I thought was over the top, is describing. But the key is the discussion around how Trump is particularly egregious, because it's all personal for him. It's all narcissistic, and he doesn't give a damn about the law at all. It's just all about him.
Yeah, look, let's go back to the 80% of Republicans who say that they think this is unfair. One solution to that is to call a wambulance. So just because you're wrong doesn't mean we should appease you. If 80% of Republicans thought that 2 + 2 = 5, which at this point there's an excellent chance they do, does that mean we change it to 5? No, it's still 4. I mean, what if 80% of Republicans said the Unabomber should have been like, I know he committed suicide recently, but by the way, lately, he had actually been gaining a followership among the right wing before he committed suicide, because those are the times we live in. What if 80% of them were like, the Unabomber should be let go? Are we supposed to let him go? What if they said Khalid Sheikh Mohammed should be let go? It's okay, 80% of them said it. Who cares what they said? That's not a thing we do in America where we run a poll and we're like, okay, but what do Republican voters think about this criminal? That's not a part of the judicial process. And besides which, what would happen if you did that? You know what would happen? They would immediately go, we knew it, we were right. See, even Biden had to let him go because it was a witch hunt. Thank you, Biden, for finally admitting that you're a crooked, a criminal, and a witch hunter. 100% of that 80% will say that. Okay, so how would that do any healing? That wouldn't do any healing at all. And yes, obviously the point that John and Ramesh are making is the most important one. It would also be a giant green light, a blinking green light, even though that such a thing doesn't exist, saying break the law, especially if you're a Republican. And members are writing in now. I love doing the show with members. Here, I'll read you one real quick. Navinik says, if the roles were reversed, do you think a Republican president pardons a Democratic former president? You have your answer. Of course a Republican wouldn't even consider it. Like imagine Trump gets in, he's like, you know what, I'm gonna pardon Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, assuming that they came, whatever, right? Assuming that they came up with evidence they don't have on Joe Biden at least. And so, no, they would never do that. They would never even contemplate it. But notice that the Washington Post chose to run this op-ed because they think, no, the Democrats would contemplate it. You just have to suggest it. And the Democratic leadership is so pathetically weak that they would think about breaking the rules to help their opponents.
Yeah. Well, look, both of you seem to not be buying this yet, and so I apologize. I'm supposed to be giving it its best chance to convince you. There's just a few more quick arguments. Let's see if this wins over either of you. A Trump trial would be one of the most divisive events in the history of our republic. It would set a new precedent and create enormous pressure on the next Republican president to go after President Biden, his family, and other Democrats. I'll pause for a second to say, and that would be flipping the script. They haven't been willing to investigate Biden up until this point. There was nothing on Hillary Clinton, nothing on Bill Clinton, nothing like that. This would change everything. And to remedy what harm? Despite Trump's best efforts to obstruct them, federal agents recovered the documents they unlawfully possessed. And there's nothing in the indictment to indicate evidence that the intelligence in Trump's possession was obtained by foreign governments or intelligence services. That last bit is true. Before that is not. There are still documents, the document that he showed off at the New Jersey Club or whatever, they don't have that yet. There are still very likely documents that we don't have. Anyway, he closes by saying, in pardoning Trump, Biden would be a true statesman. Sparing the country the ordeal of a trial would go a long way towards repairing the nation's frayed political fabric. He would display the kind of leadership that has been missing in Washington, and he would drive Trump crazy. Yeah, Trump would hate it.
Oh, yeah.
Trump would hate not going to prison. Oh, that would stick in his craw.
Sure.
But this is maybe even better. With one action, Biden would eliminate the narrative of a deep state conspiracy that is helping to fuel Trump's political comeback. You sort of already hinted at that, but yeah, that would be it. Trump and right-wing media would just be defenseless. There would be nothing they could pivot to make their followers still believe that there's a deep state. It would confirm to the QAnon people that all of it's true. That no matter how close he comes to oblivion, I guess it was all part of a plan because now he's a free man again. Like, come on, this is either the greatest lack of imagination in history, or more likely, it's just wishful thinking. That's all it is.
Well, no, it's trolling Biden, and Biden is a fool, and so it's not inconceivable that he falls for the trolling. I mean, if it runs in the Washington Post, it will definitely get Biden's attention. And his like little bunny ears will go up like, ooh, do I get to make Republicans happy? Oh, that's my favorite thing in the world is making Republicans happy. So it's not inconceivable. I'm gonna go through those quotes real quick. One, he says, this could be the most divisive trial. I have an easy answer. Then tell Trump to plead guilty. Why don't we run that op-ed in the Washington Post? Then we would get rid of the divisiveness. Trump says, yeah, I did it, I'm a criminal. He goes to jail, there's no divisiveness left. He's the one creating the divisiveness. Number two.
No, Jake, write that op-ed and submit it to the Washington Post.
I'm sure they'll carry it.
That's balance.
Right. They'll want that balance right away because I hear that they care a lot about neutrality and balance. That's why they're writing progressive columns and op-eds there all the time. Okay, and then he said, well, if you did this, it would take away the incentive for Republicans to lock up former presidents like Joe Biden. So that's just a threat, guys. He's saying if you don't let go of Trump, if we win, we're going to unfairly imprison as many of you as we possibly can. Okay, I'm not moved by that threat. In fact, that makes me want to do the rule of law more. And John is right. Oh, what? You're going to start investigating Biden? Too late. You're 3 years too late. And on Hillary Clinton, remember what they said about her. All the way back in 2016, they chanted, lock her up. Lock it. Now all of a sudden, you don't want to lock up political opponents? Oh, please. Please, Republicans can't wait to lock up political opponents. And in their case, for absolutely no reason. And the last one was my favorite, though. He's like, you know what would make Trump really upset? If you just let him off scot-free. Man, that would really get under his skin. You ought to try it. And this is really an insult to Biden's intelligence. And I'm not sure that they're wrong on that count. Okay, go ahead, Ramesh.
Yeah, I think that when we look at leading elite Democratic politicians, they are often governed by two major values. One is they play scared. They want to avoid whatever is considered most calamitous to them. So that's why we see all this critique, for example, of Brother West running in the People's Party. Though I personally would think it would be great if he ran as a Democrat, so he could face off with Biden if Biden ever wanted to do a debate. And the other value is one of not really having values and being sort of caught in neoliberal corruption, cycles. So if you want to do healing, you really want to do healing, and you want to do healing in relation to Trump supporters, you go to Trump supporters and you talk with them about their grievances and what you're actually going to do to support them, which is really addressing working class, large scale economic issues and jobs and the economy more generally. And the best attack dog on Trump right now is Chris Christie. And I think that's absolutely absurd that the Democratic Party can't step up and actually show how different and how violating Trump is compared to their own elitist transgressions. I watched the Pod Save the, whatever it's called, the country interview with HRC last night that made me want to vomit. It was just so snooty and just thumbing the nose down, like, I'm better than all of you. Got to stop the elitism, get in line with working people, including Trump supporters, want to do real deep healing, recognize the racial and other forms of violence that have led to where we're at today. We don't need to be guilty about it. We just need to recognizing history allows us to move on almost a psychic level. So there's a lot of healing that Joe Biden could represent. The question is he actually going to stand up for such healing or not?
Yeah, no, he's not. Okay, I answered it. That was quick. Okay, he's not going to do anything for the rest of his political career. Okay, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got more important news for you guys. Come right back. All right, we got our Juneteenth special tonight, so make sure you're checking that out right after the main show. And it's got Senator Nina Turner, Mayor Mondale Robinson, Sharon Reed, Adrienne Lawrence, Jayar Jackson.
Damn.
You guys are gonna love it. It's at 8 o'clock Eastern, so stay right here. You don't need to go anywhere. And then also at 9 o'clock Eastern, I'm gonna be on Dan Abrams' show on News Nation, on for the whole hour. It's a panel. We already taped it. It was amusing and gangbusters, so you might want to check it out. Me against a couple of conservatives, so that's always fun. Okay, and you can also check out Dr. Richie on Sirius while you're at it, Sundays, 1 o'clock Eastern on SiriusXM Urban View. Okay, now let's go to YouTube members. Patricia Dawson says, "What a power panel," and includes a couple of hearts, so you know that she means it. Joe says, "Yay, Cenk is back." Thank you, Joe, appreciate it. Quincy Magoo writes in, "It's so arrogant to think that we're the only intelligent life in the universe." Definitely, and barely at that, by the way, but yes, totally agree. Adrienne Vixen says, "I for one welcome our new alien overlords." Well, I hear you, Adrienne. How could they be really that much worse than our current overlords? Trisha Briggs says, "Yay, I'm so happy to see Cenk, LOL." Thank you, Trisha. Axel G says, "There have been dozens of documents that were declassified about UAPs. There have been 366 reports and 171 of them are unexplained." Well, that's a lot of unexplained activity, and my guess is that it's, yeah, anyway. By the way, when I say that they're here, I don't mean that they're actually among us and there's lizard people and they're gonna eat the mice. No, but they exist in the universe, and very likely at some point they stop by, and apparently we shot them down. I don't know that either. I'm kidding around. Okay. Freedom House 1984 is a little bit skeptical. To get to the nearest galaxy, you have to travel at light speed for millions of years. It would take more resources than Earth has, not worth the trip to see some monkeys. Well, I hear you, but they didn't know that we were monkeys. So, and to them, it might not be as many resources as it is for us. And Reiki Dragon makes a good point. How can there be healing if there are no consequences? That is very true. First consequences, then healing. We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Ramesh with you guys. John's got stories.
I do. Here it is.
Starting in September, Live Nation will automatically list all the prices up front for all tickets to events at more than 200 venues of its own, benefiting over 30 million customers. And it will give customers the option of an all-in price for all other tickets sold on its platform.
So right there you hear what seems like good news, a good development from President Biden. People have been very furious with Ticketmaster and other ticketing services over the past year. And he's saying there that now they have all voluntarily agreed, and it's good because they volunteer to do it, to disclose junk fees up front. So rather than seeing a price for a ticket and then you go through an interminable process to finally get to when you can buy it, and it's 3 times as expensive because they tacked on a bunch of nonsense. Now you'll know about the nonsense up front. And that is great because people don't like that. And they also don't like when tickets cost a lot. The issue is that none of this necessarily drops the price of the tickets. It could. There could be behavioral things where it makes people more hesitant because maybe they hide the junk fees so that by the time you get to them, you have a feeling of ownership sort of vested in that product. But there is nothing that requires them to lower their fees, to eliminate their fees. It starts to make you wonder, like no wonder they volunteered to do this. in the first place. And we're gonna talk through some of the history of this and why we've gotten to this point where Ticketmaster and Live Nation and SeatGeek and all of them feel pressured enough that they would be willing to engage in this with Biden. But I will also say that it kind of reminds me of the Republican student debt plan that came out this week. They had 4 different bills that come together, and they are the Republicans' reason that Biden does not need to cancel debt. And they almost all are like this. It's like, you'll know more about how much college costs. But like this, none of it cuts the cost of any of it. It's all just disclosure. It's not actual regulations that make things more affordable. What do you think?
Yeah, real quick, when they say they volunteered for it, that means it doesn't have any teeth. There's no regulation that corporations voluntarily sign on to that actually checks them. Otherwise, they'd fight it to no end. They'd send in lobbyists and lawyers. We've seen this movie thousands of times. And anytime that they volunteer to do something, it's usually basically a disguise that they put on, a veneer, so that it seems like they did something. And Biden gets credit from the mainstream media. Oh, yeah, congratulations, historic agreement with Ticketmaster, Live Nation, etc. And everybody chuckles all the way to the bank, okay? So now the second thing is, it kind of proves that there's an oligopoly, because like normally the way that competition and free markets would work is, hey, if Ticketmaster is putting on too many fees and charges and it's too expensive, well, I'll go to Live Nation. Well, if Live Nation's doing it, I'll go somewhere else. And it said, oh, there's only a couple that are available, and they somehow agree that the fees should be about the same. That's why we need the government to do something, because we've got an oligopoly, right? And that's when the government's supposed to actually step in and regulate, because it's obvious that the free market is not working in that case and competition has been reduced. And that's when you get Democrats into office to say, don't worry, we're not going to do that. We're just gonna have them volunteer for something that's usually meaningless. Ramesh.
Yeah, I'll never forget a couple of the concerts I went to back in the day where the artists specifically said, we're not gonna work with the Ticketmasters of the world. And that's just a reminder. So I think of groups like, I saw Prince back in the day, only charged $20, including any fees. I used to watch Fugazi back in the day when I was like a punk rocker. And once a punk, always a punk, So, these are intermediaries, and they're like platforms, right? They're not very dissimilar, they being like Ticketmaster, Live Nation, from an Airbnb or any other platform, right? The value is provided by the artist and the venue. We pay for it. They are in the middle, a corrupt intermediary. I would say corrupt because they extract so much out of the equation. And so disclosing to one, oh, actually, this is how much it actually costs, is better than nothing, but it doesn't make it affordable at all, as John, you pointed out, right? And so if we really want change, then we have to think about the affordability and shifting the economy so we don't have corrupt intermediaries hogging up all the money, grabbing all the data when it comes to tech, kind of intermediaries, which all of these are increasingly in that space, and hiring nobody and owning almost nothing and providing almost no service at all, other than simply, providing us a digital ticket, an e-ticket, if you will. So, I think that right now there's a huge opportunity to actually get to the bottom of it, right? The pressure should be on Biden to deal with this ending moratorium on student debt, to actually fight like hell for at least his fairly milquetoast plan, as opposed to the plan that I supported, which would be canceling student debt as per the Debt Collective and other groups. Yeah. So maybe better than nothing, but transparency, which this isn't even deep transparency into their business practices. Transparency is the bare minimum of a democratic accountability. And you're totally right, this is oligopoly, this is not a free market. Let alone anything that may be more public interest. And the real reason we don't have really robust regulation is because our regulators are corrupted by these industries, right? So that's why you see Biden, everyone like holding hands, chilling, hanging out with that nice like campfire setting, saying that this is our great announcement, and he's gonna take political credit for it. I just don't think it's gonna make much of a difference for what really matters.
We'll know. We'll be able to look back in a couple of years and see if it made literally any difference. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But by then, we'll have already had all the time necessary for the political value to have been extracted from this. Because despite this having nothing baked into it that lowers the cost, and it seeming totally uncertain whether it will, There's already headlines like in the LA Times, to jump ahead to graphic 4, how Biden and Taylor Swift beat Ticketmaster. Yeah, I bet the board of Ticketmaster is just like weeping today. We've been crushed. There's nothing left of us. Come on, how are you guys gonna decide that they beat? They did it voluntarily.
Yeah, so I gotta say one more thing about that. Look, guys, this is what corporate media, the part of their job. So the way that every one of these dramas unfolds, whether it's debt ceiling or Ticketmaster or fill in the blank, okay? So the Republicans ask for something incredible and extreme usually. In this case, it's corporations that are just doing something that's extreme enough that the populace is greatly agitated by it, but something extreme. And then the Democrats come along and go, oh no, not on our watch. And then the Democrats do something incredibly weak and soft and go, problem solved, when actually the problem is not at all solved. They're playing good cop, bad cop. And then if you know that and you watch like the Young Turks, you go, wait a minute, my prices aren't any lower, I'm mad, right? But if you watch corporate media, which is both mainstream media and right-wing media, they're like, boy, Biden, he crushed Ticketmaster. And right-wing media might paint it as like, can you believe how much he intruded into poor Ticketmaster's right to corporate, okay? They could corporate all day long and made this could affect their profits at some future unknown date, even though it doesn't today, right? But they'll all be like, Biden, what a world beater. So that it looks like he has the appearance of having done something. And then everyone forgets that there was a corporate problem in the first place. And then corporate media gets a giant check from an advertiser, maybe sometimes involved in that particular story. And then all of a sudden they pass the money around, they're incredibly happy, and you're paying the same exact price for that ticket.
Yeah.
You know what I call it, Cenk? It's a Trojan horse move. It's very similar to, I don't know if you all read that book, Winners Take All. It's a really good book. It basically says how the system, like those that are essentially behind the tax code, that essentially means that they don't pay any taxes, bazillionaires, right? And stave off any form of regulation, have nice foundations. And sometimes they do a couple good things. But what that does is it redirects attention from the actual structural bases by which injustice and inequalities are amplified and generated, right? So now with these headlines and clickbait and all of us oversaturated with information, we're gonna be like, oh, that's cool, Biden, took on Ticketmaster, maybe pick up a few progressive votes. But in reality, what's actually occurring is perpetuating a particular type of toxic extractive business model.
We do have to move on to another topic, but if you want to find out more about this, I have an op-ed I'm writing. It's called Biden Should Pardon Ticketmaster. Really? It's gonna be a banger. That one might get published, actually.
Yeah, that would definitely get published.
Actually, I gotta go. Anyway, why don't we talk about something different, but not that different. We're gonna stick on corporate corruption for just a little bit. Inflation has been terrible over the past few years. Regular products that you probably have to buy, services you have to pay for, routinely getting jacked up prices over the past few years. And there were a lot of different explanations as to why prices had to rise so much. Progressives might say that it was just a behavior that the corporations wanted to engage in, but you were crazy if you said that. Don't say that. And you were told by the media, no, it was COVID or it was supply chain issues, or the sun got in their eyes, or they're allergic to gluten. I don't know. They came up with a lot of different stuff. Now, fast forward to the present day, they've gotten the profits off of the jacked up prices for a few years, and corporations feel freed up to finally just admit what progressives were saying all along. We made more money because we raised the prices. That's all it is. And oh, by the way, they're not going down. We have multiple corporations that are just so happy. Now, they're not going to the media necessarily to say this, but they're telling their shareholders. And so Kimberly-Clark is a multinational that owns Huggies and Kleenex, as well as a lot of other stuff. During their Q1 2023 earnings call, the CFO revealed that, quote, pricing has continued to be a big driver behind our top line growth over the last 3 quarters. The CEO bragged about operating in, quote, essential categories that have less elasticity. By the way, in 2022, their net income increased 6.3% year over year to nearly $2 billion. They were able to reward their shareholders with $1.7 billion in stock buybacks and dividends. Isn't that always the way that it works? Another corporation, Tyson, owns Jimmy Dean, Hillshire Farms, those sorts of things. Their executives touted, quote, significant pricing power of our portfolio with a year-over-year increase of 7.6%. They also saw additional billions in earnings. And then they also spent more on stock buybacks, but only a bit. They only increased it by 948.5%. So again, like we could go through other corporations. It's all out there. They have to report this eventually. But isn't it frustrating that like the good progressives, Bernie Sanders, in the moment we're talking about this, gas is not higher just because of Ukraine. Chicken is not higher just because of the issue with the trains. The prices are higher because they're choosing to make the prices higher. And as the profit reports started to come in, that should have been the end of the myth. You can say that the price has to go high because the costs are higher, but if your profit is going up by a massive amount, then the game is done at that point. But the issue is all of the media outlets who had a duty to make sure that people understood this is why it was happening, the people who own those own stock in these companies. They wanted the price to be jacked up because they'll make more money off of it. And a rich person does not spend 1,000 times as much as you do on gas and chicken. It's a very minor thing for them. But when you're paying every dollar that you make, it's a big deal to regular people.
So I actually think this is not as big of a problem for corporations as it is of corporations as it is of the media and politicians. So here's what I mean by that. Look, I was talking to a small business owner that I know, and I said, any chance that inflation goes down at some point? And he said no, because look, we already raised prices, and you could fill in the blank on who we is, right? And it's pretty much almost all the companies. Now it's breaking news when a company has not raised prices, like Costco didn't raise prices, and that was a big deal. We didn't raise prices on membership, not a big deal, but I am saying it and I feel good about that. And so it was a choice and we chose not to, and other bigger companies chose not to as well. But once you raise the prices and people pay it, there is no business that's going to bring the prices back down, okay? That's just the reality, let's move on, okay? You're not gonna be able to fix that. So now that turns to the issue of the media and politics. So saying that inflation is real, true, the media should say that. What's causing it? Well, when they say things that aren't true about what's causing it, that's a big problem. Now, when it comes to COVID and supply chain issues, those were real. They did partially cause it, so I'm not saying don't say those. I'll come back to that in a second. But there was one thing that definitely did not cause it, which the media usually gave the top culpability to: wages. And we showed it to you here on the Young Turks. We showed you MSNBC anchors and Fox News anchors and CNN anchors, and they all magically agreed. The guys who are not supposed to agree, they all agreed the real problem was wages were too high, and that's what was causing inflation. And that is just not true. It's an atrocious lie, and it's meant to keep your wages as low as possible while they're jacking up the profits. So it's one thing to make extra profits, brag about it in your investor calls, and then send the loot back to your shareholders. That's partly how things work, right? It's another thing for media to come and say, no, the CEOs who chose to do that, it's not them at all. It's the workers that's the problem. Their wages are too high. And look, you go back and watch the tapes, okay? It's not just Fox News. Stephanie Rule did that. Almost every cable news anchor blamed, and CNBC 24/7 blamed higher wages. Now, have any of them come back around and go, oh, well, now the data's out conclusively, no question about it. It wasn't the wages, it was profit taking. It was corporate America's and multinational corporations' decisions. I got news for you. CNBC did that story 0 times. Ramesh.
Yeah, very consistent with that. It's striking that there's never any public analysis or disclosure or oversight around how much actually costs increased due to these supply chain or other sorts of structural issues or the pandemic, right? Because what we do know, as you both just said, is that profits amidst this all are at record highs. Stock buybacks are at highs, right, as you reported on, and bonuses for execs are at possibly record highs as well. So I think it's pretty telling, right? It's an excuse. It's an excuse to engage in more disastrous actions toward workers and consumers, right? Inflation isn't some actual magic economic structural outcome. It's a function of choices that corporations make around how much to sell things for their own purposes. So if there's an excuse to hike up gas prices, the fossil fuel companies will do that. And the response to that is pretty much nothing by the Democrats, because they're not willing to really address the real issues, though some like Elizabeth Warren and Sanders do point out the correct, who's actually the culprits, but it doesn't get to the mainstream media at all, as you just said. And then in addition to that, we don't really see any sort of disclosure or analysis around how this is actually able to create and generate even greater corruption for corporate execs, and generate a response that is populist in its nature by the Republicans saying, oh, well, we're just gonna drill more, destroy the planet, destroy local communities, poison people, and have energy independence, because that's the only other palatable outcome for the fossil fuel industry, right? Because then it's like more business, right? More business. So actually, the master are the corporations. And so I took this story and applied it to the fossil fuel industry, because I think they're the most egregious of all.
Yeah, so I'll end on that. Look, instead of fighting back against higher gas prices by pointing out corporate profit taking in the oil industry, fossil fuel industry, which Biden could have easily done, not only Bernie Sanders, but Ro Khanna and other progressives did a great job of pointing it out and proving their case. Biden chose not to do that. Democratic leadership chose not to do that. And they tell you, oh my God, Democrats make a big difference. Do they? Because those same companies get over $20 billion in subsidies every year from us. They take money out of all of our taxes, out of our checks, and give it to ExxonMobil and some of the most profitable companies in the world. How come when Democrats get in charge, whether it's Clinton, Obama, or Biden, they don't get rid of these subsidies, some of them which have been around for over 100 years, where they're giving money to the most profitable companies that don't need it at all for no goddamn reason, and they take our hard-earned money to do it? How come they never do that? Because they're also corrupt. Do not believe the mainstream media when they tell you, oh, Republicans, when they take money, that's terrible. When Democrats take it, they're angels. It doesn't affect them at all. They never regulate corporations, and we have all these billions of dollars in giveaways in subsidies because, oh golly gee, there was nothing Democrats could do. No, they're choosing not to do anything about that or inflation in regards to what corporations are doing, because they're funded by those same corporations. That's on this reality-based earth, not on the alternate reality that Washington and mainstream media live in, where Democrats are angels and unaffected by all that cash that they get. Okay, we are way out of time. Everybody check out Ramesh's book, Beyond the Valley. Everybody check out Damage Report, and we're gonna come back with another fantastic hour in just a minute.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
I've been honest with him, like, yeah, I was upset with you and I should have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest,
timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. When educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power, it makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America.
Listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
Drop it like it's a Donald Trump promise. All right, power, Jay Cougar, Mark Thompson, Jayar Jackson. Look at this, it's watch list, of course. You got to check out Jayar's show and the Mark Thompson Show on YouTube, okay?
Oh yes, thank you, Jack. I'm wearing wearing my own merch for the first time. Usually I wear the TYT merch, but so desperate for subscribers and for I'm in that place that you were in 20 years ago when you were just starting TYT. So I'm just looking for 11,780.
I just want to find 11,780.
Yeah, that's all I want. Subscribers, though, in my case. So thank you, Jake. It's great to be here.
And Mark also talked to Raffensperger about it, and he's got it covered. He's going to find him in Georgia, okay?
It was the perfect
If they can be found, I'll take them from the perfect call.
Mark has the perfect show. It's the Mark Thompson Show. It's perfect.
It's every day. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
I'm gonna have to get my hands on one of those hats. It's a nice design. That's my last thought.
We've got throw pillows, hats. I feel like I'm doing the show today from a department store window. There's all this merch stuff at getmarkmerch.com. But let me just explain. I normally would be there. I thought it was remote, and initially it was remote, and then at the last minute, so I just couldn't move things. But I always like to be with my TYT brothers and sisters, so next time I'll be there in person.
And no problem, but we do appreciate the Mark store that you've joined us from. Okay. All right, let's get going. We got a lot of stories.
Let's get started. How about that? Let's go straight here. Ron DeSantis has a new idea.
He has plenty of policy wins on his resume, including a pro-life Florida heartbeat law. He's quick to point out how that distinguishes him from the former president, President Trump.
While I appreciate what the former president has done in a variety of realms, he opposes that bill. He said it was, quote, harsh to protect an unborn child when there's a detectable heartbeat. I think that's humane to do.
He thinks it's quite humane. Ron DeSantis is trying to find a new approach, some way to get in and maybe dig into that deficit he's got against Donald Trump when it comes to these primaries, despite the fact that he's going through all these legal issues, which look pretty damning. But Ron DeSantis there is trying to find this angle. Maybe it's about abortion. Maybe Donald Trump is a little bit too soft. Where's the differentiation? We'll try and figure it out. He was on an interview with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and again, he was talking about abortion. Let's look at what some of these things were, because Donald Trump said this. If you look at what DeSantis did, a lot of people don't even know if he knew what he was doing. But he signed 6 weeks, and many people within the pro-life movement feel that that was too harsh. That was from Donald Trump. DeSantis didn't like that approach because he's like, wait a second, pro-life movement? Hold on, I've got some verifiable numbers from Ron DeSantis. He says protecting an unborn child when there's a detectable heartbeat is something that almost 99% of pro-lifers support. And as a Florida resident, you know, he didn't give an answer about, would you have signed the heartbeat bill that Florida did that had all the exceptions that people talk about? So now it's he said versus he said. One said the majority of pro-lifers are against this, are confused and don't really want this fetal heartbeat type of bill. But Ron DeSantis says 99%. It's all over the place. So one more time though, the 6-week pregnancy heartbeat that they're talking about is actually a fetal cardiac activity. That's a scientific term from people who know what they're talking about rather than just political speak from these folks. But DeSantis did double down though on this whole sentiment, and he really wants to drive that point home. Donald Trump has gone pro-choice. Watch more.
Do you feel the former president's going soft then on abortion a little bit, especially in this area that you mentioned?
Well, I think so. I mean, I was really surprised because he's a Florida resident, and I thought he would compliment the fact, that we were able to do the heartbeat bill, which pro-lifers have wanted for a long time. He never complimented, never said anything about it. Then he was asked about it, and he said it was, quote, harsh.
So before we get to some of the numbers on where Americans feel about this, there's something that I kind of noticed there. So he wants to point out, he has this weird sarcastic tone, or it's just his regular tone. If you're gonna come after maybe your political opponents that's very close to you on political agenda items like this, that you push to so many of your followers as he tries to adopt the MAGA movement, you have to either be sarcastic or you have to act like you're being sincere. So that he was somewhere in the middle. He's like, well, I mean, if he wants to be soft on abortion rights and soft on that and go with the Democrats, then I guess he's there. It makes me, if I'm a supporter of his, wonder, wait, is he joking? Did Trump not say this, or did he say it and you're against it? There was a weird twinge there.
Yeah, Jayar, I actually thought the same thing. I thought that the audio, when I read the comments, I didn't think it was weird. But when I heard the audio, I was like, wait, what's he doing, right? And I think what it is that he's nervous. And he's like, you would think as a Florida resident, you would know, right? What am I doing? Does anybody know why I'm talking like this?
Not at all.
So, okay, so that's one part of it. Second thing I noticed when I first read the transcript of the interview was how often he said pro-lifers. He's like, pro-lifers should be happy about that. What do you mean should be? Aren't you a pro-lifer? It was kind of telling how he kept referring to that community as the pro-lifers, a community he's not in. Like I never say the pro-choicers, right?
Those guys.
Like I'm not like, hey man, I said this on air. Shouldn't the pro-choicers be happy already? Because I'm a pro-choicer, okay? Like so that was also telling to me. He's obviously doing it for political reasons. But of course, the core of the issue is who comes out ahead on this. I think Trump said that it was too harsh because he's probably getting political advice that it's not polling well at all. And that if you agree with the so-called heartbeat bill that ends pregnancies that does not allow you to end pregnancies even super early on, that you're not gonna get elected in a general election. But DeSantis is calculating, well, we're not in the general election yet. We're in the primaries, and maybe I could pick up some votes from evangelicals and those rascally pro-lifers if I pretend to be on their side more than Trump is. And I don't know who wins that calculation. I think it's a good question. DeSantis should win that. He is more right-wing than Trump on that issue. On the other hand, MAGA doesn't really care about facts, so I don't know that it matters at all. But okay, Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, the cult of MAGA will stay with Trump no matter what. And it's true that Trump is, I think, undeniably a more charismatic figure. But DeSantis has chosen this hard right position, and he's looking for issues like this one to go extreme right of Trump. And the other thing that's interesting is this battle over a policy, if you want to call it that. I mean, in this case, it is policy, right? It's unusual these days. People don't really vote on policy, but this is an issue that does galvanize opinion. And the last thing I would say is that he knows his audience. I mean, to preach at the CBN network, or if that's what they are, that Christian network that he was doing the interview for him to preach, an earlier time for this legislation to essentially take effect. In other words, the earlier time within the pregnancy, you have a friendly room to receive that message. But in a general election, it is true, to Cenk's point, he was pointing out to the Trump calculus, it doesn't poll well. I mean, you don't need polls to see it. You can see it in the last election. I mean, this Roe v. Wade move is going to haunt them. And so while you can move right, and I'm talking about obviously the overturning of Roe v. Wade, while you can move right in your dialogue to try to win primaries, finding your way back to a middle and finding your way back to independent voters to win a general election, I think that's going to be a bridge too far. But as Cenk says, this strategy of moving far right of Trump may work on this issue.
Well, I mean, Ron DeSantis is talking a lot about who can win, who cannot win. That's been his main focus so far. So really fast, you guys are talking about polls. Let's run through these really quickly, because this is what these Gallup polls are showing now as far as Americans, not just this primary of a bunch of MAGA folks. A record high 69% of Americans say abortion should generally be legal in the first 3 months of pregnancy, first 3 months. A prior high of 67% was recorded last May after SCOTUS's Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization draft was leaked, showing that the court planned to nullify that constitutional protection for abortion. So even among Republicans, though, since we're talking primary, 47% believe abortion should be legal for the first 3 months of pregnancy. So yes, fewer than the majority, but 47%. So Gallup's oldest trend on the legality of abortion finds 34% of Americans believe abortion should be legal under any circumstances, above the 27% average since 1975. And another 51% currently say abortion should be legal under certain circumstances, while 13% want it illegal in all circumstances. 13%, that's who they're pandering towards. And also that's down from 21%. That continues to drop. So what they were worried about when the SCOTUS decision was leaked last year, and then they were like, oh man, it's gonna mess up the midterms, and now we're worried about this and that. Maybe it did kind of mess up the midterms, but then also, where are you gonna go from here? Will they take those lessons? Who knows? One more piece here, you guys. 52% of Americans say abortion is morally acceptable. That matches last year's all-time high. It's 10 percentage points above the historical average since 2001. But one more clip here, because Ron DeSantis is really trying to dig in with this particular evangelical audience to point out, hey, you guys, it's me. But can you figure out who he is? Watch.
So we need more God in society today.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, at the end of the day, there's certain problems, economic problems, there's problems at the border, there's all very important. But why are we here? Why are we free people? We're free because God has endowed us with inalienable rights. That's why America was founded.
While DeSantis wants to spread that message today, looking back in history, he told us of another message that would have been great to witness.
Could I have been there with Jesus's disciples? I mean, these are people who, Peter's just fishing one day, and all of a sudden, this guy comes up to him, catches all the fish and says, you're gonna be fisher, I want you to be a fisher of men, come with me. And so these guys all went out and they dedicated their life to spreading the gospel. I look back at that and would love to have been able to be there with them.
Can you imagine a candidate for president, you guys, running and then quoting stuff from the Quran and saying, this is how we're gonna live our lives, and this is where we're gonna approach it, and everybody goes, yeah, good job, yeah, exactly, that's our guy.
Yeah, I mean, look, two quick things on that. Ron DeSantis was a disciple of Donald Trump. So how did that turn out? So Jesus, if I was you, I'd watch your back. Okay. And Jayar's not wrong. I mean, if he came in and said, "Oh, imagine if I was there when the Prophet Muhammad had landed, and he had told us of the greatness of Allah, and I would have been his disciple happily." And obviously that would be the end of Ron DeSantis' career in America, and we would move on. And so that kind of irony is barely ever noted. I'm glad Jayar pointed it out. Last two quick things. They call it a heartbeat bill. I don't want anybody to get confused. There ain't no heartbeat there because there is no heart in the first 3 months, not even close. The heart has not formed. They're just lying as usual, okay? And then finally, this might be a lose-lose for DeSantis, because he's trying to get to the right of Donald Trump to win over those Republican and MAGA voters, which he probably is not going to be able to do in the primary. But if he does somehow get past it because Donald Trump's in jail or something else like that, well, then he burned his general election bridges with 69% of Americans trying to outright wing Donald Trump in the primary. So I think it's a loss for him in the primary and the general election. So happy to see it. Mark, last.
Yeah, that's exactly the point I made. He'll never get those independent voters, even if he were to end up top of ticket on the GOP side. Yeah, he is. Of course, Cenk says it. I think in a better way. He's burning that bridge. So, indeed, well said.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, our bridges are totally intact, but we're going to tell you about whether they will stay intact in Texas, where a Death Star, and that is what it's being called, a Death Star, by the Republicans might be attacking next. We'll be back. All right, so back on TYT. First of all, my book Justice Coming is coming out soon, relatively soon. You can pre-order at tyt.com/justice. I did start handing it out in New York when I was there, and a couple of mainstream media folks were like, "Really? How progressives are going to take over America, and America's going to love it? Really?" So I see the book that they're saying really about. At tyt.com/justice, so you can pre-order it. The audio recording starts tomorrow. I'm going to start recording that at a studio in LA. All right, Cassandra Hefton says, bobblehead Ron, how did Trump miss that one? It's a good one. That's Ron DeSantis for you. Man, if I was ever in a race that the media actually covered what I said, oh my God. I would have some fun. We all would have some fun, but God forbid a Democrat should ever fight back. Okay, Jason Ray says GOP and its abortion problem is the dog that caught the car, and hopefully the car is about to back over them at the ballot box. Okay, that is a good way of putting it, Jason. And they did catch the car, and I'm not sure they're happy about it. Trisha Briggs says, Cenk, I'm so glad you're back. Don't tell the others, but you're my absolute favorite. Too late. Always. Trisha, are you crazy? You think I'm not going to tell the others? That's the first thing I'm going to tell the others. Anyway, but we love you. But she went on, Mark, I'm subscribed, and Jayar looking extra fly today. Okay.
Oh, that's nice.
Lots of love out there. All right, Andrew Bockhorst writes in, who comes back to work on a Friday? Good point, Andrew, but I worked all the way through in New York, and then when the conference was over, I got up at what is equivalent of 3 in the morning here and flew back to do the show. Steve Pift writes in, Ford pardoned Nixon, look at how well that turned out. Loser. I like that he had a loser. Nutritionist Liz writes in member section, Mark's show is amazing. I love it so much. Florida Friday and the Monday murder sections are wonderful.
Wow.
Monday
we need
murder.
more comments like that. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, the Mark Thompson Show. Thank you for subscribing.
Yes. And it's the Mark Thompson Show when you go to search it on YouTube, which you should. Ryan the Therapy Dragon says, but damn, the second hour power panel is about as old school as it can get. That is true. You're welcome. Maudib69 has an idea about where the alien information is. The evidence is in a bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. And then Stone Cold Rock would like to get in trouble saying, I can say with 100% certainty that my ex-wife is an alien. On TYT, Jank, Mark, Jayar with you guys, but also Alex is a new member, and Box gifted a membership, and Samantha Toda, American Hero, gifted 10 memberships.
Wow.
Everyone who signs up is an American hero, but when you gift, you become a double American hero. Look, it's not a small thing, okay? I love when you guys look out for each other. The join button's below, that's how you sign up, or you can go to tyt.com/join. You know it, Jayar.
Speaking of people that aren't American heroes, Governor Greg Abbott down in Texas. Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, is taking one step closer to being the Sith Lord. At least that's the way they're dubbing this bill. It's called the Death Star. It's a bill that Abbott signed into law that would crush the power of local governments to do what they're supposed to want to do, because he'll be the one telling them what the hell to do. Sounds crazy, let me tell you the details. It's House Bill 2127, and it was pushed by corporate lobbyists, surprisingly, and signed into law on Wednesday. And it prohibits a city or county from enacting laws that contradict anything in Texas state code in 9 areas. Really fast: agriculture, business and commerce, finance, insurance, labor, local government, natural resources, occupations, and property. Sounds like a lot of things they're taking over. The new law doesn't just prevent localities from implementing fresh regulations. Even worse, it even overturns existing measures that exceed state rules governing agriculture, business, commerce, finance, insurance, labor, local government, natural resources, occupations, and property. Oddly, those same things that they were just talking about. Pull the legislation back on ones that are already there, because they're like, yo, we're gonna take over here. We're doing whatever the hell we want. So the reason they're calling it the Death Star is because, I don't know how many of you guys are the Star Wars wars type of nerds, but it's the Death Star, which would take out other galaxies or planets within the same galaxy in those old movies that I haven't seen since I was 13. But still, here's how Republicans are trying to push this bill as something that's decent. Proponents say that the law, which is set to take effect on September 1st, helps business owners to avoid having to navigate different regulations in different localities. This is what it's actually gonna do. In practice, as the Texas Tribune notes, this law would block local ordinances providing benefits to workers, like mandatory paid sick leave or water breaks for construction workers. Meanwhile, though, heat-related deaths on construction sites have doubled already in the past 10 years compared to the previous decade. So they're like, yo, something's really bad. Let's make it much worse. Why not? We're Republicans, and then we'll tell them that it's the Democrats' fault, even though we're running things. At a Harris County, Texas, there's one regulation that requires construction companies to keep records on safety, at which bars unsafe companies from being considered for certain projects. That would be on the chopping block, is what critics of the law have also noted. So do bad things, and then maybe you'll get more contracts. That's just how Republicans work these days. A little bit more. The law would also ban cities from passing new rules against predatory lending without first getting approval from Texas legislature. That's a problem when predatory lending, like other capital-driven interests, is always innovating in how it can screw the everyday person. And the new law even has the potential to affect how governments can react to natural disasters, including hurricanes that hit coastal areas of the state. That's what critics have also pointed out. What's good about this again? And again, I'm gonna point out at the top, it was written by corporations and people with all this money that paid off these legislators to do so, and then screw over workers. So the next time you're complaining about things that are happening with your work, your job, your pay, and how these either some minority or immigrant is destroying it because they came and are trying to live, remember this one bill, because they're trying to make it much, much worse. When your family member gets sick on a construction site, maybe even dies, whatever, it's someone else's fault. One more, here's the worst part. The bill is so broadly written, as we're going through all these very minute details, no one knows exactly how much it would ultimately limit local government's power to make rules.
Okay. So first, let's talk about the hypocrisy, then let's talk about why they're doing it. The hypocrisy is that the right wing has said my whole life, like, local government is better than the bigger, faraway governments, okay? You need states' rights. Okay, like the right to make sure that black people can't vote. I mean other states' rights, very important states' rights. Like if we want to pass legislation making sure marijuana is legal. Well, no, okay, we don't mean that either. We mean other states' rights, right? But now the problem they have is that even in red states, the cities are oftentimes progressive, and so now, why is that a big problem for conservatives? It's actually not that big a deal, because at the state level, they can still get outvoted, right? The left wing gets outvoted in Texas, for example, no matter how liberal Houston might be or Austin might be, okay? So where's the problem? Well, the problem is, if Houston passes a higher minimum wage than the state of Texas, well, then those beloved corporate donors are miffed. And Abbott and the Republicans can't have their donors miffed. So that's why they're passing this law saying local government, the one we told you was awesome this whole time for hundreds of years because we were using it as an excuse to keep down black people. Now local government sucks. They don't know anything in their cities, okay? We need to deregulate from way hundreds of miles away from them, even though we don't know their current situation at all, but we're gonna interfere with that to protect our donors and make sure that they could hurt you through lack of safety regulations, lower wages, and all of those things. It's super obvious. It's totally transparent. This is exactly what corruption looks like. Mark.
Yeah, there's no sleight of hand here. It's true. The reality is that Texas is a state of great size. So the immensity of Texas is relevant here because you have a lot of localities that are responding to various concerns that may relate to problems on the job. Construction was the one that was noted, but it could also relate to pollution, environmental pollutions of one sort or another. There are water supplies that can become contaminated, soil can be contaminated, and these are things that happen to localities that may not happen statewide. But the line of money between business and the governor's office is direct. And the line of money to all those legislators and all those smaller city councils in the state of Texas, because of its immensity, it's not as direct. So buy and pay for Greg Abbott and then don't worry about the rest. It's pretty disgusting.
Yep.
It's almost a sign for what they were also talking nationally versus states' rights as well too. I mean, even we just talked a minute ago in the last block about abortion access and rights, and they were like, "Oh, you guys, calm down." Once the SCOTUS decision was leaked, they were like, "Yo, this isn't going to be nationwide. You're just giving the rights back to the states." Ever since then, you've been hearing about how they keep saying, and then they ask some of these national politicians, "Well, would you make it a national rule?" Like, well, I mean, wait, because I want to make sure I talk to the people that I think I'm kind of convinced of this, rather than the lies I was just telling maybe a couple months ago.
Yeah,
well, that's exactly right. Yeah, go ahead, John. We used to say the voter suppression and women's reproductive rights are classic examples of them not being so keen on states' rights. It's a crazy. It is a crazy irony, but as I say, there is no sleight of hand here. There is a direct line between, in this case, Texas and the governor's office and a corporate ownership.
Yeah, so the last thing I was gonna say, they had huge problems with their energy grid in Texas, and it got so cold and people froze to death and it didn't work, and those were all privatized. And so if a local municipality wants to look out for the citizens of Texas, make sure the energy grid works or the pipes don't freeze or anything along those lines, or the water doesn't get polluted so that they have a drinking water problem, right? All those things that they would normally do to make sure that their community is safe, this says you're not allowed to do any of those because corporate profits are more important than the safety of those local communities. And that right there is the defining feature of the Republican Party. And if we had a fair and honest press, they would all tell you that 24/7. But unfortunately, a lot of that corruption and money in politics goes to Republicans and some Democrats, and then right back to that corporate media in the form of ads.
It's not even limitless capitalism, it's limitless corporate capitalism. We're ready to go for more? We got one more squeeze in here. Let's do this really fast, you guys. It's almost the weekend. Maybe you guys are gonna party a little bit, but make sure that for the hateful folks, you're more on this side. There's a new study that's apparently changed one man's life. One white supremacist looks like he's given up his racist views because he tried some MDMA, also known as Molly or ecstasy. He enrolled in a study in February of 2020, and it investigated whether or not MDMA could actually change the way people feel, increase their pleasantness of touch, and maybe their love. So what does it work when it comes to one said white supremacist? After the experience, this man named Brendan returned to the researchers and wrote, he returned a form to the researchers and he wrote, "This experience has helped me sort out a debilitating personal issue." He told them, "Google my name. I now know what I need to do." Oh. The researchers looked up Brendan and discovered that he was a white supremacist who had lost his job after being revealed as the leader of a white nationalist group. He had also attended the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017. We know what happened there. He's also led the US Midwest faction of Identity Europa, a white supremacist group rebranded in 2019 as the American Identity Movement, because they got to keep changing their names because they're white supremacists. So they tracked him down, worried about what he meant by "I now need to know what I need to do," because white supremacists said, "I know what I need to do, and I come to this enlightenment." So they're a little concerned. This is what he told them. 30 minutes after taking the MDMA pill, Brendan questioned, "Why am I doing this? Why am I thinking this way?" And he wondered why he had jeopardized the relationships in his life. He realized that his life was missing some connections. I understand, that is cool. Maybe you're figuring things out. As we evolve and progress, new things get discovered about things that are truly important. It's true that MDMA is known for causing feelings of empathy and sociability. But this Harriet DeWitt, who led this whole research, said this: "It's what everyone says about this damn drug, that it makes people feel love." But she was still shocked by the transformation that Brendan had gone through, though. Newer pointed out that Brendan's seemingly spontaneous change appears to be an exception to the norm. MDMA releases the chemical Oxycontin, which our bodies naturally produce, but the chemical causes animals to fiercely love their own, but also protect them from others, which can mean a disdain for outsiders may actually increase. But it didn't have that effect here. In this case, it was suggested that MDMA has the potential to influence a person's values and priorities. That's what the authors wrote. And they hypothesized that if extremist views are fueled by fear, anger, and cognitive biases, they could potentially be treated with drugs. Is this the answer?
Yeah, I think.
We'll just like sprinkle it over like these when they're training in the middle of their.
Yeah, where's the Chinese weather balloons when you need one, huh?
Yeah, you want to crop dust the hate rallies. Good plan.
Yeah, crush up some Molly and hey, look, I found it. They spread it all over the Trump rallies. Problem solved. They're like, "I knew it. Fauci and 5G did it, and they put it in the Molly." No, okay. First of all, we're not doing any of that, and nor would that work. Okay. So, but it does turn out that if you're looking for love, you might want to look for Molly. I get it. I get why it would create that chemical reaction. But guys, is it going to create it every time? No, not necessarily. And you should be super careful of how much of it you take, and don't expect magic. Just because it has that effect on one person doesn't mean that they've studied it and had the meta studies, et cetera, that could prove it. It doesn't mean that the minute you slip it into, Uncle Fred's drink while he's watching Fox News, that all of a sudden he's gonna be like, "Oh my God, I kind of see the love." That's it. I'm voting for Bernie from now on. Okay, I don't think it works quite that way. Okay, I have more theories, but Mark.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you're going to find anybody jumping off the Sean Hannity train just because they're taking Molly's. I have to say also, not to sound like, I'm so glad you said it first, but it really it can be tricky. I mean, anything that involves mind altering can alter the wrong way and in scary ways. This is an amazing story. To be honest, it's almost like it's like act one of a sort of a. It could go comedy or it could go horror. You know what I mean? Taking a white supremacist or a hateful guy who's alienated his entire family and his entire community because of his hate, takes this whatever, in this case it's Molly, and somehow transforms himself, and now his world is about reconnecting with all of these people. I feel like there's, I don't know, like a Bill Murray movie there or something, but here it is. I mean, it's the real thing. But again, your mileage may vary, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Look, but overall, don't get me wrong, I believe it. I believe it had this effect on this guy, and I believe that it could have similar effects on others. But this is why we should have never had these drugs on Schedule 1 or any other kind of schedule where we had that insane rule where we couldn't do research on them. No, you should believe in science, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, part of the establishment or not. So by all means, they should do a lot of studies on these drugs, including LSD and shrooms. We covered that last week. Yes, a lot of these, and marijuana, wind up having positive effects in ways that we did not know before, because the US government in its infinite stupidity blocked all research on these drugs. Let them do the research first before you do your own personal research. That's just a word to the wise. Yeah, Mark.
That's money, and that's money too. What Cenk's talking about is money. I mean, that's the reason that research was blocked, and that's the reason that this has been walled off. All of everything from marijuana to shrooms and so on. And these are infinitely better. Even I would suggest respectfully. I mean, better than alcohol. I think alcohol can get you, and I'm a drinker. Okay, so but I'm just saying you look at gun deaths and you look at other mayhem related to substances, and alcohol is way outpacing anything in this other category. And so yeah, this is a wildly intriguing story for that reason.
Maybe instead of Molly, it'll start being called woke, because this guy Brendan, after doing this, he hired a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant to help him out. He went to therapy and he began meditating. Woke.
But you know what?
That's Act 3.
Go ahead, Mike.
That was Act 3.
No, that's Act 3 of the movie. I mean, it's just great.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But no, I have Act 4. If Act 4s exist, okay. We tell the right wing that it's the woke drug, and they get so mad. You know how they always smash things like the Keurig machines and the Bud Light and stuff? They start smashing the Molly, and then the vapors rise up, and they're like, and all of a sudden,
well, now we're writing.
Yeah, all of a sudden they're like, I think Joe Biden is competent.
Is that blue I see?
Maybe Hillary Clinton's not so bad. Okay, no drug's gonna get you to say that. Anyways, we gotta go. We got another hilarious story for you coming up in a second. Come right back. All right, guys, Juneteenth special coming up in about 12 minutes, so right after the Young Turks, so stay right here. Jayar is going to be part of it, Nina Turner, Mondale Robinson, Sharon Reed, Adrienne Lawrence. You guys are going to love it, so stay right here. And as I told you, at 9 o'clock Eastern, I'm going to be on News Nation for the whole hour with Dan Abrams. I already know there's some fireworks in there because we taped it yesterday. I think you guys will love it. Should Biden pardon Trump? We talked about that. That was hilarious. And does Trump have reasons that he might have wanted to sell those documents? Interesting reason to check out News Nation tonight. All right, Great Ape Apex writes in about that so-called pardon idea. Pardoning him will erode any confidence anyone has in our legal system. He'll still probably get off scot-free. Yeah, of course it would destroy any confidence in the justice system, and that's why I think that Biden probably would consider it. But anyways, next TYT reporter writes in, how does that orange zit getting away with crimes heal anybody but himself? Agreed. Reno writes in, would a newspaper owned by an oligarch make a case for allowing another oligarch to get away with crimes? Of course. Okay. Kofefe19 says, pretty telling that his supporters want Trump pardoned, which implies they know he's guilty. He wouldn't need a pardon if he was innocent. Ding, 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 ding. They know, come on, they know. They know he's guilty, of course. Gabby Marita says, Trump defenders be like, he didn't do that. And if he did, he didn't mean to. And if he did, you don't understand why. And if you do, it's not a big deal. And if it is, others have done worse. Sounds just about right, as usual. Gabby, another brilliant comment. I do declare, has written in, I'm sure Trump and the Republicans that have been screaming lock him up and lock her up for the last 8 years for crimes they didn't commit would definitely want to pardon a Democrat. Right, no, there's no chance they would pardon a Democrat, you're totally right. Elizabeth Craig says, I used to spend so much on concert tickets through Ticketmaster, and the majority of the time that it wouldn't even be front row, I stopped going because it just felt like extortion. Well, you and most of America, and that's why Biden has gotten a historic agreement where they will not reduce it by a dime. Dragon with the Girl Tattoo writes in, sounds like the healthcare industry, the middlemen get greedy and make it completely unaffordable, referring to Ticketmaster. Sounds like a lot of our industries, to be honest. Just another Iowan in Fresno says, still more proof that Biden is a conservative. Rather than ordering companies to stop unfair practices, he just has them tell us a little bit more openly, knowing we have no choice but to use their services anyway. Again, about the Ticketmaster story and correct. And the abortion story, Helen 007 writes in, too harsh. Isn't Trump the one that told Chris Wallace women who get an abortion should go to jail? Yes, of course. Did he speak out of both sides of his mouth? Of course, he's Donald Trump. Huang Jun with another good point. If DeSantis and Jesus were alive at the same time, DeSantis would try to take away Jesus' civil rights. Think about it. Jesus hung out with 12 guys. They had dinners together, gave each other foot rubs, and took long walks on the water. Jesus was the kind of woke DeSantis is fighting against. Another good point. And Civitas Vox writes in, Alec is hard at work about the last story. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Jayar, Mark with you, and also Elizabeth Warman just joined and became an American hero. You could do likewise by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube or going to tyt.com/join. And I'm contractually obligated to read this comment from a YouTube member. Embedded Dude writes in, Cenk is very good at stripping away the BS and getting at the truth. It may be obvious to some, but not to everyone. There's nothing I could do. I had to read it.
Quote him.
I had to. Okay. It's in Burgundy will read anything in the promise. Anyway, seriously, Embedded Dude, thank you.
And was that Elizabeth Warren? It was not time to find out.
Elizabeth
like you said.
Warman. Okay. And I like that. It's a fun last name.
Potato.
All right.
Let's get this one done, you guys. Let's go here. And probably one of the most unsurprising stories ever, the Miami New Times reported that Donald Trump, after his arraignment on Tuesday, went to that restaurant where they collected together and he said a few things and took the hell off. But before he took off, what he said was food for everyone, because there was food in the place. People mistook him for thinking that he would pay for that food for everyone, because that didn't happen. After the arraignment, Trump opted to decompress with a trip to Versailles in Little Havana. The iconic restaurant has long been a pit stop for politicians seeking to curry favor with Miami's Cuban voters. And what better way than to announce that you're gonna buy food. Inside that bakery though, Trump supporters fawned over him, regaling the soon to turn 77-year-old with a rousing rendition of Happy Birthday, a day early and holding a group prayer. A glad handing Trump was heard to declare food for everyone. Again, there's a little bit of an attorney-like omission there. A knowledgeable source assures the New Times that Donald Trump's stop at Versailles totaled about 10 minutes, leaving no time for anyone to eat anything, much less place an order. Maybe he could have left an Amex card or something. But also, according to the New York Times, Trump didn't even order anything himself from the restaurant. Instead, He ate some McDonald's on the plane ride back to Jersey. And we know that Donald Trump wants nothing to do with his supporters, especially when he says he'll do something for them. Pardon January 6th, folks. I mean, I guess there's a couple of elected officials and politicians and supporters that he tried to pardon. But also, there was what he did back in 2018 when he had folks come to the White House. And what he ordered was not Versailles food. It was also not even Burger King. It was loads and loads of McDonald's. I think we're seeing a theme here. Also, that one time when he went to East Palestine, Ohio, to survey the issues that were going on after that train derailment. Watch this.
What's your specialty today? How are you today? Nice to meet you. Hello, everybody. That's a nice, beautiful looking group of people. So I know this menu better than you do, okay? I probably know it better than anybody in here. We're going to take care of the fire department. Okay. We're going to take care of the police department.
No word on if those promises to take care of the fire and the police department follow through either, but I'm gonna guess no.
Yeah, we never did follow up on that McDonald's, now kind of famous McDonald's visit that he did in East Palestine. It was a good political move, it really was. And this one was a good political move. But I forgot to, it's Trump, I should have thought of it. I forgot to ask, wait, did he actually pay?
He never said pay.
He never actually paid.
Take care of. In other words, like hug.
It was such a good political move to stop. You know, had you not stopped, you would have had the continued analysts on all the major mainstream networks talking about the arraignment, what was involved, what was revealed. Instead, you had them all following him into this Versailles restaurant, talking about a Cuban a political bloc and currying favor. And you could have bought out all of this blowback for $5,000. It's a sign of how cheap Trump is in the end, that he wouldn't just step up with the $5 grand to cover whatever it is, $6,000. He certainly has it, but instead, you can't un-Trump Trump. He skates without paying, and that is just, and so now you have this conversation going on.
Yeah, 100%. So look, it's great politics. And I know MAGA doesn't care about reality. They don't care about facts. They don't care that Trump thinks that they're suckers and losers and just to be taken advantage of, etc. But really, and I know that he's in reality close to broke. But it just doesn't take much. Mark is right. $4,000 or $5,000, even for a guy as broke as Trump, is not that big a number. Given that you got Mar-a-Lago, all those other properties you still own, the golf courses, and the Saudis are funneling you money for the documents. I mean, for the golf, okay?
Well, Cenk, he raised $2.5 million that night at his Bedminster place. Remember, at that benefit?
Yeah.
Just hours later.
That's right. In fact, that day overall, he raised over $6 million. But he can't help himself because he's Donald Trump. All right, everybody, food's on me. Everybody go nuts. Of course we're not paying, let's get out of here, okay? They're never gonna catch us, and even if they did, they wouldn't care, okay?
He's right.
And look, even though I was attacked by an angry mob in Little Havana, true story, I still say Versailles is delicious. And you should go check it out when you get a chance, okay? But don't count on Trump paying for it because he ain't gonna do it. He's gonna run out the back.
Maybe this is also the place where there was a reporter, I forget what she was, I don't wanna say the wrong publication. She went in and asked Donald Trump, this must be within the first 10 minutes. And she goes, are you prepared to go to prison? Something along those lines, I'm paraphrasing, so I can't quote her specifically. Booze and all rang out. They shoved her out of the restaurant. I think it was Caputo, Michael Caputo was the one who shoved her at the end and told her, get out of here, you stupid B, and she was ushered out of there. So that was part of the anger that started. Maybe that's what caused a shift, a little bit of the energy change, and then he put his card back in his. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt.
That has nothing to do with it. Okay, but I will tell you this, because we're the fairest show in America. I think Jake Tapper was wrong to turn away from that scene. They were showing it on CNN. He enters a restaurant, he gets big cheers, and Tapper says it's turning into a campaign ad. Let's not do that. Everybody celebrates him. No, that wasn't a campaign ad. That was a campaign stop. And if Joe Biden had done that, there's no way in the world they would have turned away from it. If DeSantis had done that, they would not have turned away from it. They just didn't want to show Trump being popular. That is not the correct answer. If you don't look at it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It does exist. He is very popular. The correct way to handle it is very popular within the MAGA base, not in the country at large. You show that, and then you give the context. And then what would have been infinitely better is if Now, I'm not asking that Jake Tapper should have thought of this. I told you I didn't even think of it during the McDonald's episode in East Palestine that happened a long time ago. But the perfect way to cover that would be to show him and then go, and there he is leaving, not having left any credit card or any other information behind. And as usual, he'll stiff those people.
He probably walked out with food.
And guys, super last thing. You know he's having trouble finding a lawyer right now for the incredibly important documents case down in Florida when he's the former president. Any lawyer would be dying to represent a former president's incredible fame and potentially money and an incredible business. He can't find a lawyer. You know why? Because he never pays his lawyers. He's got $200 million sitting in that he raised for a legal defense and he won't pay the lawyers. He's unreal cheap. That's the real Donald Trump. All right, Juneteenth special for TYT coming up right now. Stay right here.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing news TV show in the United States of America, compared to all shows on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and roughly 30 others. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable. Donald Trump radicalized citizens. He's the chief terrorist. Republicans still want you to think that critical race theory is the greatest evil that can happen in K-12 education. It's not even taught. I guarantee you this, David. If he would have taken a knee during the national anthem to bring awareness to the need for more money for cancer research in America, he would not have had that response. It was the fact that he took a knee for black folk and brown folk. You rather pick the voters because you're scared of the voters picking the politicians. It frightens you. But we coming. When you are in a privileged position, equality looks like oppression to you. The Karenicity runs deep in this one. We provide a mirror for reflection and a mirror for correction. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Let's put up the graphic of this Karen in peak performance. Boom. They want anarchy so they can start creating their own rules.
Can you share with me some examples?
When they were running around during the terrorist attack on January 6th saying, hang Mike Pence. So those are the people I'm talking about. That's a problem, correct? You work for Mike Pence, stand up for the guy. Do not allow the ideology of politics to evaporate the humanity that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, so I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reformed in this country, so I won't stop. And you won't stop either.
Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. Here at TYT, we understand this. That's why we're not gonna price gouge you or use inflation as an excuse to raise our prices. A TYT membership is not your typical subscription, but basic membership is still just $4.99. So what do you get for that price? For starters, you're getting exclusive programming, unique, exclusive designs from Shop TYT, access to a members-only chat, giveaways, emojis, and so many other amazing perks. But most importantly, you're helping to make an impact. As a TYT member, you not only help us do the shows every day, but you drive real positive change in the process. In 2017, we helped to start Justice Democrats right here on TYT. That's a group that got a dozen progressives elected into Congress. That's amazing, you did that. Your support also funds TYT's very own investigative reporting. Just recently, our reporters exposed the Fellowship Foundation and pressured lawmakers into boycotting that bigoted event. Isn't that amazing? We raised over $30,000 for Jackson, Mississippi, and delivered clean water to thousands of people in need. Our petitions, polls, and community of activists help keep the corruption of Washington in check. That's the impact of what just $4.99 a month from our members can do. And we're just getting started. Positive change doesn't occur overnight, but with your contribution, we can make it happen together. We've been around for about 20 years, and we have about 20 billion views. Am I proud of that? Hell yeah, I am. We put out 20 billion messages in a bottle. Have we helped to move now 2 generations, millennials and Gen Z, to become progressive? Yes, those numbers are real. We moved generations. Were we the only ones? Of course not. But we have been the largest online news show
for now decades.
Hello and welcome to TYT's Juneteenth special. And we got some important things to discuss around 2023 and the history of Juneteenth. The first half of this evening's coverage, we're joined by Mayor Mondale Robinson, who is a Rebel HQ contributor and the mayor of Enfield, North Carolina. And we have journalist extraordinaire, the one and only Sharon Reed. And Sharon Reed will be with us the entire hour. So the first half an hour, you got the mayor and myself and Sharon. And the second half an hour, you got Jayar Jackson, Sharon Reed, and Adrienne Lawrence. So don't you go anywhere. Now, Juneteenth, it definitely comes at a troubling time, but it certainly is a historic occasion. It really is about the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863. And then in 1865 in Galveston, Texas, it took like 2.5 years for the enslaved Black people of Galveston, Texas to realize that the Emancipation Proclamation had set them free. Now, as a historian, I'm gonna give you a whole bunch of background about that, but that's basically the gist of it. I mean, don't get me started about the border states where people were enslaved still in those border states, states like Maryland, et cetera, West Virginia, where they were still enslaved. The Emancipation Proclamation did not set them free, but I digress. It was just a historian to me. But let's take a look at some of the things that have been happening to the Black community in modern times.
That is not accidental. This is what happens when you lose democracy. This is what we are fighting against and must stand up against as legislators and as people and as citizens across this country. Because it's starting in Tennessee, but it won't end here.
So we are advising our members and others that if you go, be cautious of how you operate in the state. That if you have another choice to hold your convention, consider a place outside of Florida.
I don't know, funny fact is, Black people did not get to enjoy the other freedoms until their Second Amendment rights were secured. And I think that that's one of the lessons that we learned.
Aren't allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
I disagree with you on that, Don. I disagree with you. I think you're doing a disservice to our country.
Okay.
I want to bring everyone together, said Justin Pearson in a voice that if you closed your eyes, you could easily imagine coming from a suburban orthodontist. Justin Pearson wasn't white. That's probably how he got into Bowdoin in the first place.
Jamal Bowman shouting at the top of his lungs, cursing, calling me a horrible, calling me a white supremacist, which I take great offense to. That is like calling a person of color the N-word, which should never happen.
Oh, the good, bad days. Not at all, Congresswoman. She does not have a clue. So we're gonna have this discussion about the past, about the present, and really about the future. Let me remind you again, as I said in the opening of this show, that Juneteenth is a celebration for African-American people all across the country. But it started in Galveston, Texas because of that Emancipation Proclamation that was in January of 1863, where President Abraham Lincoln set enslaved people free. The news did not get to Galveston, Texas until June 19th of 1865. So again, about 2.5 years for them to get that. As we know, they didn't have tweet, They didn't have text messages. They didn't have any of that modern stuff that we take for granted now. And it took that long for them to know the news. Now, historically, it is important for me to remind you that the Emancipation Proclamation, the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation was a strategic political tool that President Abraham Lincoln used. And because we were in the Civil War, he did not want to have to get in battle with the border states of Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, Missouri, and West Virginia after 1863. So it is important for you to understand that enslaved Black people in those border states were not set free by the Emancipation Proclamation. But nevertheless, here we are, talking about this from a historical perspective. We're gonna bring it on to the present, and let's talk about where we wanna go in the future. So Mayor and Sharon, it's so great to have you here, all of us to be here for this first half an hour of this special. So we played some round robin of some things that have been happening to the Black community in modern times, because I think sometimes people believe that when we talk about Juneteenth or we talk about Black history in general, that we're talking about light years ago on the spectrum of history. This stuff was almost just yesterday. Your thoughts? And Sharon, I'm gonna start with you.
Well, you said a lot. That opening piece showed a lot, Senator, and much of it's hurtful as this marking, this celebration's been co-opted by the usual suspects in the most ignorant ways. I found myself today reaching out to my friends in Florida. I know it's a federal holiday, but I wanted to know what was going on down there. And I haven't had comprehensive talks with them just yet, hopefully because they're out celebrating. But I'm also thinking about that day. I was looking over some of the archives and General Granger's proclamation.
A special order number 3.
Right.
Yeah.
And it talked so much too about how Blacks didn't really celebrate and were still told what they could and couldn't do. So what is freedom? What's the price of it? It's still, to me, a question that we struggle with today.
Very much so. And Mayor?
I think, listen, I think you point out important points, especially this part about asking the world what is freedom. What is freedom? And by textbook definition, it means the ability or the right or the power to speak and act as one wants to without hindrance. And when we're asked that question in the context of Black America, anybody saying that Black people have the right to speak and act as they want to without hindrance is not living in this world. So, like our ancestors on December 31st, waiting for the Emancipation Proclamation to take place, even before Juneteenth, 2 years before, I'm still staying up to midnight waiting for that day. It's still a watch night for me.
Watch night,
because I am yet to see Black people be equal, or let alone talk about this idea of freedom. And then we can't allow our history that is created in fancifulness to cloud what really is. Abraham Lincoln, to me, is not a soldier. You're a coward when you use Black people as political pawns, as he did. He was in DC. He knew 13, 14 miles up the road, a little further than that, of course, in Delaware, but not much further. He allowed Black people still to be enslaved, and I see that as cowardice. You cannot have freedom for some and freedom without others. And you all both know that Black people in Galveston, Texas knew they were free. The white people that had power over them wouldn't let it be until they were forced by Union soldiers. And I still feel like Black people suffer in that manner today.
Oh, in many ways we are. Well, you all have joined us on the Juneteenth special right here at TYT, where we bringing it to you, baby, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And to go back to something that Sharon said and you said, Mary, let's take a look at General Order number 3. We're talking about the general, Major General Gordon Granger, and this is, we're reading straight from it right here. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. And the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. So let's I don't know if the team can keep that up and put the three of us up, but I want us to be able to break this down a little bit. Now that last part in particular, the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that of employer and hired labor. Now they know good and daggone well that those former slave masters were not going to treat enslaved people like they were employees and pay them a living wage and make sure that they have benefits and healthcare and land and all of that stuff. I know I'm putting some modernization on it, some 21st century on it, but that just was not going to happen. But think about this. This order assumes that Black people had to take the position of employer, of hired labor. Did y'all peep that out? The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. So how am I free when you also telling me I got to be hired labor? This involves an absolute equality of personal rights. That all sounds good, but we didn't have any rights, and rights of property. We didn't have any property between former masters and slaves. They were not about to give up that property. And we all know General Sherman's Special Order 15 was not executed at all, where Black people were supposed to get their 40 acres and a mule. So even, Mayor and Sharon, even as we dig into this, you see all of the loopholes, if you will, similar to the 13th Amendment of the Constitution. Your thoughts? We'll start with Sharon.
Yeah, and look at the whitewash. What you just read there, we're supposed to celebrate and be so grateful for what we're given after such horror. And that's really where we are still today. They were supposed to go to work and not gather and not get out the pocket. And if somebody asks you for your papers, you're supposed to still show it to them, much as it is today. So I guess for me, it's I don't know why, and the mayor said something not but a couple of minutes ago, and it makes me wonder why we can't just tell the truth. Can't we just tell the truth about all of it? So many people who look like us don't know the truth, and I'm not even placing blame. I'm not placing blame for that. You have to seek it out, study, do a dissertation, and you still will have the details in so many ways left out, because we have to put someone in a camp of hero like Abraham Lincoln, instead of saying, look, here's everything. And you don't have to buy that all that long ago, people, well, that's just what they did, slaves. No, people were conflicted and they knew better back then, okay? If you were human, you knew better and you did it anyway.
That's right. And when they had the chance during the American Revolution, they wanted their freedom from King George. They had an opportunity not to carry in slavery over into the newly formed country of the United States of America, but they did it anyway. Mayor, any final thoughts?
I would just simply say that, I definitely do not buy into this idea that people didn't know that was a thing, the way things were. You couldn't say that when you had just, 100 plus years before, 1800s, you fought a war for your freedom. Give me liberty or give me death, right? When a white man said that, he is a leader. History books are written about him. When a Black man say by any means necessary, same statement, he's considered a radical, i.e. Malcolm X. So I think it's a cautionary tale for us to pretend that white people didn't know what they were doing back then. On one hand, you called us animals while you raped our women, while you raped our men. And killed your kids in some cases. So I think it is naive for us to downplay the horrors of this peculiar institution we call slavery, and I appreciate both of you for pointing that out.
No, I agree with you, Mayor. We bringing it to you. And as a reminder for those who believe that slavery was so long ago, let's put up this little quick timeline here just so you can see it, and we'll read it too. You're talking about the 1500s here, which was the 16th century. And you look at that red, the 1600, 1700, 1800 American slavery, about 340 years. And when you push into that segregation, until 1865, 1954, still fighting against segregation, 89 years, and then we're into the 2000s as we speak, and we're still fighting some of the same battles that our foreparents, and some of our foreparents who had to endure some of this stuff, they're still walking the face of this earth, or their children understand what they went through because they had those conversations. The United States of America is still a very young country, so none of this was that long ago. And the federal government failed African American people after the Reconstruction. because of a deal that they struck for political reasons, right? This is not new for Black people to be left out in that way. They pulled the federal troops out of the South, and it was business as usual. But here we are, though. We wanted to lay that out for you. Let's talk about some of the positive things about Juneteenth, because we do have a shero in this story. It was very important for her to fight long and hard to make this a federal holiday, and she's been on this journey for a very long time, and that's none other than Mother. Some people call her grandmother, but I call her Mother Opal Lee. And I had the opportunity to meet her in 2016 on the campaign trail. And she fought really hard. And I do want us to lift her and not forget that her reasons were pure and genuine for wanting the United States of America to recognize this as a federal holiday, although the history attached to it is extraordinarily on the opposite end of that. She did work very hard in trying to do this, collecting signatures, talking to elected officials, doing walks all across the country to get this done. I remember Sharon and Mayor, I had the opportunity to be on a call with her. I brought her and P. Diddy, Diddy Love together. And Diddy helped her collect more of the signatures that she needed to push it over the top to turn this into a holiday. And so there are a whole host of other folks whose names I don't know, that I'm not naming, but I am proud to say I had a little small part, and I say small part, in helping Mother Opal Lee get this thing over the finish line. She undoubtedly and her family did most of the work, and others who were with her over the years. But in being able to form a relationship with her and her niece and asking them what they needed, I did my small part, which is to link her up with somebody who had the cachet to help her bring it on home. So I want viewers to know that Diddy Love was very instrumental in helping Mother Opal Lee get that over the finish line. But she shouldn't have had to collect signatures. She should not have had to beg this government, these Democratic leaders to make Juneteenth a national holiday. Any thoughts on that?
I wish it was something that more white people celebrated, a cleansing, if you will. I don't see why you wouldn't. I don't see why you would fight against noting this day, this holiday, why you wouldn't wanna spread that love. And thank you for mentioning that circle of love, because when you put her picture up on the screen, I love her. I just love her, and the fact that generations came together to get it over the finish line with her leading it just speaks volumes about perseverance, resilience, love.
Yeah, it really does. And man, she at 89 years old, Lee made a 1,400-mile walk to Washington, D.C., which became an annual walk. This was really serious for her, and this is what she had to say. I gathered some people at my church, my pastor, the musicians, the county commissioner, school board members, and they gave me the send off. I started walking from Fort Worth to Washington, D.C. I just knew somebody would notice a little old lady in tennis shoes, and they did. So my question for us is, how can we honor Mother Opal Lee? She was doing this for pure reasons, even though we know that the answer to what true freedom is for the Black community, it still remains a question mark, right? We're still trying to find what that means. But how do we honor women like her, and why was the Juneteenth 19? Is it still important for us today, despite what others did along the way, or did not do along the way? Mayor?
Yeah, I think, listen, first of all, Mother Opal is absolutely the mother of Juneteenth. And I think people we shouldn't play with the idea. Grandmother play implies that, something, you're a generation removed from the work. This is her work. She's the mother of Juneteenth, and we should acknowledge that. Also, we should also acknowledge right now in this moment, the average experience, the average life of Black men is around 60.8 years, 69.8, right? Our government is trying to extend the years you can qualify for Social Security to 69. She was born less than 69 years after slavery ended. So I'm telling you, within the life of her life, and 96 years, we're obligated to understand that nothing for Black people in this country comes easy, nothing. An 89-year-old white woman walking anywhere, let alone 1,400 miles, would have been national news. The fact that you are breaking that news to most people in this country is a damn shame. But it also reminds us that we have so much work to do to remind people that regardless of what's going on in Florida with their governor and other places trying to erase us and our history, it is impossible as long as we're willing to walk.
That's it. It is impossible as long as we are willing to walk. And speaking of Florida, we know that Juneteenth is a very important holiday, especially in today's current climate. We did open up the show with some segments about what is actually happening to Black people in real time, the erasure, how certain leaders are trying to dehumanize us, take away our history. They don't want people to know our history. All of a sudden, white people understanding our history is a burden. All of a sudden, it's a burden. And they're using law. I mean, they're actually changing laws to prevent our history from being taught. So DeSantis is really at the forefront of this, but he is certainly not alone. He's a revisionist history zealot who claims that Black history lacks educational value. And he has spent the last year working to ban the teaching of Black history and to whitewash it in Florida. Here's a headline for you, just in case. Ron DeSantis bans African American studies from Florida high schools. Does not want them to know it. A move by the Republican governor is the latest in a series of actions to stop conversations about race and gender in public schools. Because if we have that conversation, God forbid that our younger people will be enlightened and understand. It was James Baldwin who once said, "Know from whence you came. If you know from whence you came, there's really no place that you cannot go." I'm paraphrasing him on that. He was talking to Black people. The Black history is all people's history. And he's basically saying, let's expand that out. Know from whence you came. And there really is nothing wrong with telling the good, the bad, and the ugly about this country, unless you don't want people to know the truth. And that is the DeSantises of the world. And again, he's not alone. Now, he's even targeted colleges because no student is safe in Florida. Let's take a look at this. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signs a bill banning DEI initiatives. That's diversity, equality, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in public colleges. And thus, and his efforts to restrict teaching on racism and bias have multiplied across the country. So he's not by himself. We have a chart to put up just to show you this. We have tracked efforts in 36 states to restrict education on racism, bias, the contributions of specific racial or ethnic groups to US history or related topics. It is happening all over the country. And this is 21st century America, y'all. We're not talking about, let's put the mayor and Sharon up. We're not talking about 19th century, 20th century, 19th century, 18th century, or 17th century America. We're talking about 21st century America. Sharon.
I think people want us to shut up. And when you're talking about an 89-year-old woman who again had such resolve, who wouldn't shut up, who did it, I always saw her smiling, by the way, then we can do something too. You asked what we can do, Senator, and I just think it's simple. Whatever your platform, wherever you are, just keep calling it out, keep congregating, call to action, whatever it is, don't shut up. Because people are uncomfortable. I think that's like a simple, and maybe it's Pollyannish, but I think that's what we have to do. Keep talking about it, passing it on, educating our young people, educating ourselves, and staying in the fight, which isn't easy because there's a lot of anger, okay? Just being Black in America on this planet, there's a lot of anger, and we're not angry people, but the forces from the outside are, the pressure point is pretty high.
I mean, we are a conscious people. James Baldwin once said to be Black in America is to be in a constant rage all the time. So if you're conscious, you're raging because you know that things are not going well. So we're getting the sign. We only have a few more minutes left, to be exact, in our first half of our TYT Juneteenth special. We are joined tonight, one happy family, with the journalist extraordinaire, the one and only Sharon Reed, and Mayor Mondale Robinson, and we are breaking this truth down. You know, I did put up I want the team to put up some of the books that we would like to recommend, and then Mayor, you jump on in here and have the last word in this segment. But I want to leave them with some things that they can go and read to further their research. One is titled The Brightest Day. The second book recommendation is Juneteenth, a children's story. Adults can be edified from reading this book. And this is the book that is written by Mother Opal Lee. And the last book recommendation, and there are many out there, you all, these are just recommendations on Juneteenth. So these are 3 resources that people can read to learn more about the holiday, especially Mother Opal's book. Mayor, you get the last word in our segment.
Yeah, I think in addition to your reminder that people that this is the 21st century, but I want people to understand that Ron DeSantis' issues and the ramifications of what he's doing is not just new, right? This is not because of Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. People should know that we have a long history of white people being miseducated about what is and what it was, right? This is how we got the lost cause ideal about the Civil War, because the daughters of the Confederates, people talk about the monuments they had put up, but we didn't talk about the books that they forced into Southern school curricula that changed a generation, 2 generations actually, of what white people thought was the truth. And all of it was based on just Southern propaganda about how pleasant slave life was. And we see that now. And there's a danger of the next 2 generations of Floridian kids of being miseducated to the point where they think the slave trade was nothing but a business trade. And I think we should be very afraid of Ron DeSantis and his anti-wokeness, meaning, he's trying to distinguish this flame that James Baldwin was talking about. If you don't know, if you're asleep, then you won't be on fire. But to be aware and awake, damn sure will set you on fire.
Amen to that. Well, we are on fire tonight. Well, this is the first half of the special. When we come back, y'all stay woke and stay ready. All right. When we come back, you'll be joined by Adrienne Lawrence, who will lead the discussion with, again, journalist extraordinaire Sharon Reed, who's here for the entire hour, and TYT's watch list leader himself, Jayar Jackson. You're not going to want to miss the second half of TYT's Juneteenth special. We'll be right back after this.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN. Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. When educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power, it makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America.
Listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
Welcome into the second half of TYT's Juneteenth 2023 special. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Adrienne Lawrence, and also alongside me is Jayar Jackson, host of TYT's The Watch List, and Sharon Reed, TYT Sports contributor. Thank you both for joining me today.
Excellent, I can't wait, good times. Yeah. Happy Juneteenth, everyone, it's coming.
Happy Juneteenth, brother.
Yes, Juneteenth, and the thing is when we talk a lot about the issues that arise around things that are impacting the Black community, we know that one of the most prevalent wars on Blackness emerges in the education system, whether that be whitewashing basic history, granting school vouchers, or cutting program funding. Black children's education is under attack and has been for centuries. You know, when I think of the fact that Brown v. Board of Education, the seminal US Supreme Court ruling ordering desegregation of schools, was nearly 70 years ago. But today there is still the situation where you have schools are under federal orders to desegregate. Check out this headline from earlier this month. That's right, June of 2023. As it shows here, 32 Mississippi school districts still under federal desegregation orders. That's right. June 2023. And a lot of people will associate segregation with the Jim Crow laws of the South, but a majority of segregated schools were in the Northeast and Midwest, because the reality is that anti-Blackness is everywhere and it's also ever present. As the Economic Policy Institute indicates, Black children are the most impacted by this disparity, and Black children are 5 times as likely as white children to attend schools that are highly segregated by race and ethnicity, as you can see here. School segregation really worsens when schools break away from an existing district to form their own, which they'll often do, claiming that they need more local control. And the end result ends up being whiter schools with better resources. And really, despite the research showing that school desegregation is economically beneficial for society as a whole, particularly the Black community, it still is very much the case where there is segregation in education. And also to really talk about some of the effects of integration, we can look at this for the National Bureau of Economic Research. Some of the long-term effects of school desegregation: increased Black men's annual earnings by 5%. 5 years in desegregated schools yielded an 25% increase in annual earnings. Significant long-run improvements in Black adults' health. Reduced the probability of spending time in jail by age 30 by 14.7%. These things are significant. And yet we still have a system that operates every day in a fashion that continues to keep Black children in schools that are segregated, that aren't truly reflective of our society, and that refusal really to recognize that the issue is still ever present than it was back in the day when Brown v. Board of Education was ruled upon. It just tells us that this is a problem. And the thing is it's not a problem that Black people need to fix, because racist practices are not something we created. But even with that said, Sharon, I know that you're a parent, and Jayar as well. What do you think needs to happen to level the playing field in education?
Well, we have to keep fighting. And I'm sorry, but white parents have to step up and fight for our kids and understand that our kids matter and that we love our children just as much as they do. These schools are something else. Having to go in every day and hold certain administration, certain teachers, certain accountable. My daughter went to a great school, okay? Not everybody has that option. And even in that great school, when I look around and see some of the disparity and how some people are talked to, maybe their mom's not there every day or isn't around the corner. It's a lot. Everything seems like it's a fight. And as we fight for our kids, what are we teaching them? That every day is going to be a fight for them. And that's not really a childhood, is it? It's really not a childhood. And here we are all these years later as we celebrate Juneteenth. And I wonder, Adrienne, what are we really celebrating? We're still talking about a fight, inequality, less than, hurt, pain, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, on and on and on. And while I'm grateful, of course, that we're not slaves anymore, and people got the message a couple years late, but they got it. At the end of the day, I wish we could just be people who were celebrated for the gifts, the talent, the love, the ways we built this country. It's like we can't get past what was done to us because it's still being done.
Well, as we've already seen, he's talking about how things are already still being done. It gets written off as complaints. And why don't you guys pull yourself up by your bootstraps constantly over and over again, these same things? Because as we've seen, when someone says white supremacy is what's guided this nation from beginning to even some still institutions we hold now, it makes sense, doesn't it? But we like to sever that. It's reasons why governors like Ron DeSantis are trying to eliminate the education of what is it's happened since up until now, because there are connections to it if you pay attention to it, if you analyze it correctly. Look, because it's based off of white supremacy, there'll be beliefs from many bigoted people who say, yo, why don't you just go ahead and do it yourself? What's the matter with you? Because the blame has to be that Black folks are still inferior without saying the term inferior. It's like when people say that, oh, I'm not a racist, I didn't use the N-word, I just did things and said things and it helped implement policies that made disparities between the two groups or multiple groups around that. So if the blame has to go to Black folks for not being good enough, if we actually invest the same way in our children, the way that we invest in certain other children, we will see those differences begin to equate a little bit more. And then that would eliminate this myth that Black folks have lower IQs, can't learn, do things differently, are more prone to negative things that they've pushed since the beginning of time, because that that's what keeps certain hierarchies in our society the way that they are. This stretches to other things outside of race. Of course, we see the attacks on the LGBTQ+ community. So imagine that also added to Black folks within those same communities. These hierarchies have to continue. That's why whenever you see someone from these type of affected communities, it's, oh, well, they're this, they're that. These assumptions are made, but they can't be made unless the policy or the agenda items that are put in place by politicians or carried out by our society in general continue to leave it that way. If we actually, things like policing, housing, employment, equal pay, we know Black women are paid wrongfully and differently than others, women in general. So if you add that to it, it changes how things happen at home. And if those things are happening at home not the same way, and we have segregated schools and certain schools get more money than others, the results are right there in front of us, but then we ignore how we got there. And it's just ignorance on display right in front of us. It's a matter of whether or not we're gonna accept reality.
Absolutely, and the thing is we've seen over the course of history that even when there were times where Black people pulled themselves up from their bootstraps, even though I hate that reference and it's an absolute joke, but when we had Black Wall Street, when we had communities, we had Tulsa, we had all of these thriving and populous banks and opportunities for growth, what happened? The white people came in and they lynched, they burned it down, they flooded, they did everything in their power to shut down any prosperity that Black people had built. And that is continuing to go on today through various ways, whether it's legislation that's passed that has a disparate impact, or by creating a system by which people continue to be saddled with even debt, if you look at the student loan setup. Either way, it's problematic across the board, and it seems to be the case that until we, number one, acknowledge our past and the history of this country, but also be willing to institute the measures that are necessary to course correct, then we're just gonna be having this conversation year after year. And there's something also we're gonna have a conversation on, because it does happen to have its roots also in the slavery era, is the adultification of Black children. The reality is we're seeing conservatives now executing their agenda by way of saying they need to keep children safe. And to the extent that that reference is to children, even though we know it's veiled for all sorts of nonsense, but we definitely know that it's only cishet white children. And we see this time and time again as Black children are deemed threatening or dangerous or hypersexualized simply because they exist. For example, in April, 16-year-old Ralph Yarl, who you can see pictured here. We're gonna put up his photo, although I'm sure you've probably seen it because it was all across the news. And when he was shot in Kansas City, Missouri, when he accidentally knocked on the wrong neighbor's door when he was trying to pick up his siblings. And the teen's assailant, Andrew Lester, 84-year-old white man, pictured here. He stated that he thought Ralph was trying to break into his home and he was scared to death due to the boy's size. Ralph is a lanky 5'8" kid under 140 pounds. Get out of here. Also in May, a Mississippi cop named Greg Capers, well, he shot 11-year-old Adrienne Murray, whose photo we'll put up here. That child had called police for help, but he was faced with deadly violence and left with incredible amounts of trauma.
Sometimes I can see myself laying inside the coffin. Them are my thoughts at night, my only ones. I sometimes think people are watching me, but my main thought is me dead.
11 years old, that's a child. The adultification of Black children, it's illogical, it's wholeheartedly racist, and it's incredibly harmful. Being seen as adults negatively impacts kids' emotional, mental, and physical health. And it makes it more likely that they're gonna be subject to unwarranted punishment and even disciplinary disparities. For example, we know that Black children are far more likely to be subject to suspension and expulsion in the academic educational climate for the same behavior in which that their white colleagues, classmates engage in. And as we just spoke about, the educational disparities that are already present because of segregation, it just shows you that this is very much a part that is built into the fabric. And also we have to consider the intersectionality when gender comes into play because it compounds the harm. Black girls perceived as being less innocent, more mature for their age. And you can see from this graph here, from a report that was released by Georgetown Law, that Black girls are not afforded the same opportunity to be children. They're hypersexualized. They are mistreated just like Black boys are too. And the thing is nothing has changed, but it clearly seems to come from all of these roots of white supremacy, really dehumanizing Black people, making out Black boys and girls to be adult-like. And society justifies harsher treatment and hypersexualization every day. And again, Sharon, I know it's not our jobs to remove the boot from our necks, but what do you think needs to be done to address these issues?
Boy, it's a direct question, but there's just no easy answer. And I'm still reeling from the soundbite you played to have a little boy. He sounded paranoid, didn't he? He sounded paranoid. I picture myself in a coffin. I feel like people are watching me, but you're not paranoid if it's actually true. You are being watched when you go into a store, when you walk by a door, when you knock on the wrong door, you are being watched. And sadly, there's a mom who can't look at her son and say, you're not gonna end up in a coffin. I mean, the way I parent my own child who's just being a child and may mention something and everything has to be a teachable moment. I'm so worried, like, well, you don't wanna play, you don't knock on people's doors and run and stuff that kids do sometimes. You don't even wanna discuss it because I immediately have that fear. What can be done? I don't know, because just when I think there's a line that we can educate our kids to, Adrienne, there's something that crosses it and we learn something else horrific. And a mother is dead over an iPad with the kids watching her take her last breath. I don't know. I just don't know.
It's trauma on top of trauma. This is the thing, I always talk about how it's an illustration of our society. So if our society deems certain folks a certain way, that's the way it generally goes. So if it's been that way since, say, the beginning of the country, and we have this slow progression, you would think, as we talk how proud we are about our progress, we've gone so far since the civil rights era and since enslavement and all these types of things, we've gotten so far. If we're proud of it, why don't we talk about it? Why don't we talk about how we've gotten from point A to point B to point C to point D, if we've even gotten that far? The folks, a lot of times that are rejecting the idea of progress or actually doing something different to where our society sees certain folks, if we wanna change that, we would talk about it. Instead, we have blockades and shut up, don't mention that. Just in general, when it comes to the way folks are seen in society, like the young kid who was traumatized by thinking about and seeing himself in that coffin. How much do people really relate to him? How much do they see their own children in him? We just spoke earlier about schools and desegregation, how schools are still segregated to a very large degree all over the country. I'm in Los Angeles. I've dealt through that with my child. He's been in 3 elementary schools. I see it. It's not like a lib city thing. It's the way people react from community to community. So how do you change a society? It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of understanding, and it takes people listening. So if people don't understand or believe, here's 3 Black folks on a Juneteenth special complaining again, which I'm sure people would see and think, how much do you really learn from that? How much do you understand? Do you think that we all collect an email every morning, go, this is what we're gonna complain about today? Or maybe we have similar type of experiences that illustrate how our society treats us. But if we see things like Black Lives Matter protests or rallies or discussions and people say, what are you talking about? All lives matter. When we see kids get assaulted, killed, treated a certain way, and you don't care, you're proving right there how much you don't care about someone else's life. If you can't see them as the same, or at least the same worth, when it comes to economic to any other levels that keep certain people down, it will continue. How does that change is the hardest question.
Exactly, and the thing is I maintain, and I will always maintain, that this isn't a problem Black people need to fix. This is what white people need to fix. They created this situation in this country and they cannot ignore it. And anybody who chooses to ignore it is part of the problem. And they're opting to be part of the problem because we've been in your face for centuries, letting you know this is unacceptable, that we deserve better. And for you to continue to allow it to persist, and if not enable it, that tells me you are very much a part of the problem. But I know as we approach Juneteenth and how important it is now as a new federal holiday, I definitely want to end our special today with some uplifting news. Despite the fact that what we know from this recent survey released by the Washington Post today in a report says about half of Black Americans say that racism will only get worse over the rest of their lifetimes and are, rightly so, fearful of racism continuing to amp up. despite those things, nearly half of Black Americans still say it's also a good time to be Black in the country. And that's cool, because as I was reading the report this morning, I was thinking, that's awesome. The fact that we're always smiling, we're always doing something, we're uplifting. It's awesome to be Black. Like, you see all the stuff that we do, we create, and it's like one of the things they can't take from us is our joy, even though they try. Sharon, what is something that really means something to you this Juneteenth weekend that you know they can't take from you?
Well, I think just that resilience, that you're right. We have the opportunity to just keep going. And after hundreds of years, you haven't broken us, and you're not going to. And we figure out how to survive and thrive. We're smart, we're creative, we're brilliant in our approach, and we're strong. I wish we didn't have to be so strong, but I celebrate that we are. And for the lessons that I'll have to teach my daughter, she'll be better for it. She'll be stronger than the next one. And that's part of our history, part of our legacy, a part of her future.
Yeah, generational trauma is a real thing. And Sharon, I'm glad you pointed out this way. And what you see in our children is what we can see as far as the progress, or at least hope for something else different. So yeah, there's the resiliency there. And the more that we see it getting passed down to our children, them understanding their world and where they fit into it, and seeing themselves in a different place than maybe my grandparents saw themselves, or what they felt they could have the ability to do in this country, to then my parents, to then me, and then my kid. You see that type of change happen, and that actually inspires us to continue to go on and fight these fights and continue to have these disagreements, and even proof of what is that's happening. And why are we trying to convince other folks? It seems like, if we could just get it all done because we have a certain level of control ourselves, then sure, it would get done. But that's why we collectively need more people. If you don't see every American as an American, how do you include all Americans unless you have no intention of doing so? And also, in the digital age that we have now, my kid's all over the usual socials and reading up on things just from sports, because the kid's obsessive about it. He sees this disparities and differences, the way people talk about one group to another when it comes to basketball, to the NBA. They see it. They're not dumb. They're smart enough to see how these things go. So when they see it and they recognize it, and we have to guide them through it, it sometimes hurts. And also sometimes it's very joyful to see the things that they're learning and the perspectives that they're getting about our world and our society. And they're gonna be part of that change. And I think other folks that they're around, these other kids, hopefully, at least from my lived perspective that I'm seeing in this city, some get to understand a little bit more, because the interactions of folks that you can learn from them just from being near other people, it does wonders.
Yes, it absolutely does. And that's a cool thing, that connection via social media, where you can reach people across the globe and you can also absorb their knowledge. You have these creators on TikTok, YouTube, and all of the other platforms that are educating us in ways that schools didn't, or maybe our parents had limited knowledge about our history, our past, our contributions, and also the reality that we face every day. And I think the coolest part of that is being able to share it with others. Having grown up in an all-white space, I have a number of white friends, and I pass on that news. I pass on the things that they need to know if they're going to remain in my life, because it's incredibly important that they have the knowledge to know what they need to have, the conversations they need to have with their white family members and their other white friends, because I'm not gonna put it all on myself to educate, but my God, is social media a great mechanism for getting the news out there. And so as we kind of start to wrap things up in our conversation today, I want to ask you, Sharon, what are you doing to celebrate Juneteenth?
Well, I'm gonna be with family, reflect. I like to look at some of the National Archive stuff. Maybe I'm a geek, I don't know. Just to kind of take you back there and just kind of think about what it was, what it is. But I have to say, we might have been separated at birth, because I did the same thing. I'm gonna be unapologetically Black. And if you wish to be in my presence, then you're going to have to accept that. And I hope that you want to grow. I hope you want to grow. So I've lost a few, but I've gained some others.
Absolutely, they lost you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's similar connections here, because I grew up around a lot of white folks and Black folks as well, because there was integrated schools around where I was, and I was like, why do we have to do this? I'm like in 2nd grade, but the people who actually will learn and connect from you just from being near you, they benefit from it. So even the terms of like, we're gonna be unapologetically black. Some people get afraid that, what does that mean? I'm not gonna do. It means I'm gonna be myself, because we have to switch for society to make sure you accept us. So maybe sometimes you should have to learn something. Maybe sometimes feel uncomfortable, because when people say, yo, this is very uncomfortable in this one particular party, I'm the one white person. Hey, maybe you can absorb how other parts of society actually interact. And then you're gonna be a better person for it. It's not for me. It's for you to be a better person, and maybe your life will be more enhanced. Maybe you can be a better member of society. Then everyone gets better.
Absolutely. And so what are you doing, Jayar, to celebrate the holiday?
We generally go down to Leimert Park. There's a huge Juneteenth special every a celebration festival every year down there. The food, the music, the folks. It's a happy celebration. I've learned and gotten around specific smaller black businesses, from breweries to clothing stores to restaurants. It's a beautiful celebration. Everybody's out there. It's happy. It's glorious, and it's a celebration of our emancipation, but also our position in society that we deserve.
Yes, thank you. Well, you both have an amazing, incredible weekend, and everybody out there, thank you so much for joining us for TYT's 2023 Juneteenth special. Again, I'm Adrienne Lawrence, and for Jayar Jackson and Sharon Reed, we are wishing you an informed, an anti-black, and a reflective Juneteenth.